see if I can get that right. I call this meeting to order of the Siloam Springs City Board of Directors for February 25th, 2025. Roll call.
Blair.
Here.
Burns.
Here.
Wiles.
Here.
Hunt. Rissler.
Here.
Allen.
Here.
Carroll.
Here.
At this time, if you'll please stand with me as Director Carroll gives the prayer, and please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let's pray. Father, tonight we give thanks. And we ask that your light would shine. That you would shine in such a way that we can find common ground, a place to work from. And that your superpower of common sense can reign supreme tonight. That we can do things in order and do them the way that you called us to, and we can be your people. We thank you for the beautiful day you've given us, the opportunity we've had to experience warmth. We anticipate a great spring. We thank you for these things, Father, in Jesus' name. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to ask anyone with a cell phone or electronic device to please silence it so that no one is interrupted when they're speaking. Next is our public input time, and if there's anyone who wishes to speak to the board about any item that is not a current agenda topic, please come to the podium, give your name and home address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. City Board, Arthur Holbert, 20705 Highway 16, Siloam Springs. It's great to be with you all tonight. I do want to thank you all for coming out in support of the annual chamber banquet where we celebrated Joe Wilbright, James Barnett, and multiple other businesses. That was a great event. Really appreciate y'all being here. From an economic development standpoint, I do have some good news to present. Basically, last week I met with a business, and Al and I followed up this morning. And I think it was last December, y'all discussed possibility of some new businesses coming in, possibly some incentives. There's one particular business that we've met with. They've been around 27 years. Basically, it was recently purchased. It's called Pendercraft Cabinets. It was purchased by Brad Smith. He used to be one of the owners and CEOs of Kimball Mechanical for over 20 plus years. And while he was the CEO, he saw it go from 42 million to over 100 million. And he just bought this business. About a year and a half ago, it's already grown from 1 state to 7 states in the last year. I met with him. He is interested in relocating the business to Siloam Springs. And he's bought 5 acres behind Day Springs, wanting to build a pretty large facility, 26,000 square foot facility on a 5-acre tract. Currently has 20 employees, consists of engineers, laborers, managers, accountants. Average wage over 60,000 plus benefits. And basically, you can see this as a $40, $50 million business very soon. He's got a proven track record, Kimball Mechanical, CEO, owner of that. Like I said, these are not cabinets like for your home. So when you think about cabinets, it's not like one that, as I understand, competes with what's already on 412. They do medical manufacturing, office retail, and then Alan can share with the board the details of what that looks like. The specifics to this, it's a very, very, very high-end, high-grade, pretty expensive cabinet. So specifically, what I would like y'all to consider, obviously not tonight, but just kind of food for thought to get y'all thinking about this business. I would like y'all to respectfully consider some incentives, such as waiving some of the business permit fees, waiving some potential impact fees, bring power instead of transformer to the building off of, like I said, behind Day Spring. So bringing some good paying jobs with good benefits to Siloam Springs. He said he would love to be here. There's other places that would love for him to be here. He says, I can sell my property for more than I paid for it right now, but being that he's willing to meet with us, he's interested, I would just like us to consider it. He is a local gentleman who owns it and willing to move the business from Northwest Arkansas, a different town, to Siloam Springs. Thank you very much.
Arthur. Is there anyone else? Next, I'll ask if anyone who wishes to make a comment on the consent agenda, you can come to the podium and give your name and address as well. Not, we will review the consent agenda, which is the regular board meeting minutes of February 4th, the workshop minutes of February 4th, the purchase of public work for the Public Works Department of the Street Division, Bruckner's Truck and Equipment, a 2026 Mack Granite Triaxle Dump Truck for $199,887. That was letter C, or item C. Item D is for the Public Works Wastewater Treatment Plant from JCB Teletruk, the Lift Truck Service Center, through the Sourcewell bidding process, $84,402. Letter E, the approval for inventory, a Bobcat forklift from Hugg for $121,030. Letter F, Resolution 0725, the Arkansas Division of Environmental Quality, a contract of obligation. Letter G is Resolution 0825, setting the hearing date for easement vacation at the address of 201 North College Street. Is there any item that a board member wishes to remove to have separate consideration?
Mr. Mayor, I would like item G removed.
I can't hear you.
I would like item G.
G, all right, item G removed. Is there any other request? If not, we will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda with item G removed.
So moved.
Second. Moved and seconded. Any further discussion on the consent agenda with item G removed? If not, roll call.
Burns,
Yes.
Wiles,
Yes.
Hunt,
Yes.
Bristler. Yes. Allen,
Yes.
Carroll,
Yes.
Blair.
Yes.
Motion passed. Betsy, item G.
I would like some clarification on this. I've gone and looked at it, and it looks to me like an entire, like they want to close that one-way street. And then I was also told that it had to do with building the deck, and the deck was built or started without permission, and that closing this, doing this easement is basically, they were told by staff that we'll fix it by closing the easement. That was the gist of what I've been told. So can I get some clarification on what actually happened and why they're asking to close this street?
Mr. Mayor, Kevin Moore, Public Works. It's essentially what happened was the owner constructed a deck in keeping with the staircase that they have in front of their building, thinking that the property line went all the way to the street. That's not in fact the case. The property line is very close to the building itself. And so staff advised them that the only way to keep the deck would be to abandon the right-of-way since it is currently constructed into public right-of-way. So staff has not told them to do this, but this is the only way if they wish to keep the deck for them to proceed. And then depending on the board's decision at the ordinance, it would either vacate the right-of-way, allowing them to keep the deck, or retain the right-of-way, and then they would be required to remove it. The resolution itself is just setting the hearing date so that you can hear it at first reading in its ordinance.
Right. So that easement, does it include part of the street?
Not the street itself. It's right up to the edge of the street. So they are abandoning the area of the deck and the width of the deck all the way along their parcel. So there is kind of vertically, basically, in line with the edge of the deck, all the way north to Ashley Street, I believe it is.
Director Blair, if I may.
in our meetings too, we advise the folks that built this, there was no way that, the only way they're gonna have to move it, or they're gonna have to move it or remove it. So that were the options that was given by staff. I was in both meetings.
Okay.
And so this was another attempt to possibly find a way of keeping it, but the only way you can do that is bring it in front of the board for a hearing date.
That's correct. And they're not closing the street itself. They're just narrowing it so that the deck is no longer in public right-of-way.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor? I was just going to comment that I have been involved in that somewhat because it's in my ward. And I think we will probably hear from the owners at some point tonight, since it's just setting the hearing date. They didn't necessarily need to be here. But there are some issues with that street that have kind of come up in all of this. One issue is that a lot of people don't even know it's a one-way street. So I think we may hear some of the other issues that the owners of that property and other owners of properties along there have seen, that while there was a misunderstanding with where they were building the deck, there have also been some other issues that have been raised that maybe some of this will help. So we'll be hearing more about it, I'm sure, from them.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Lisa?
I'm glad Betsy brought that up, because I did get a phone call or two on this one. Actually, one phone call, one in person, that they felt like the city was kind of being deceptive. And I tried to explain that sometimes we try to work with citizens and try to find a solution. But I guess, so let me ask so they understand. So a permit was requested to build what?
The deck was constructed with no permit. And so it was found through code enforcement to be within public
Okay.
right-of-way.
What other permits have been issued on that property?
I don't have that in front of me. So the building permit is essentially, it wasn't requested prior to construction. So if the right-of-way is vacated, then we'll retroactively process a building permit for the deck.
Okay, I guess the citizens' concern was, like, when somebody builds a sidewalk up to where a fence, then, how we change everything to accommodate that. So we come up with all these fence laws now. So no permit was issued for the stairs that were there before the deck? Because,
Mr. Vice Mayor, the stairs have been there for quite a long period of time. I'm not sure the original date that the stairs were built, but if you look in historical images, the stairs were already there. They've just been upgraded at some point. I don't believe that those were permitted through the permitting process, but they would have likely been grandfathered in because they were in an existing condition.
So we don't have a
The ones that
history
go
of it.
into the front of the building, but those stairs themselves, the property line for that building is at the face of the building. So the stairs themselves at this point are currently owned by the city and the public right-of-way also.
or did the city build the stairs?
I do not believe so.
No, the owner improved the stairs. It's their
It
private access.
probably wasn't
into
even
the
these owners, it was
public
probably
right-of-way.
previous owners.
Possibly.
Okay. Okay, because it was questioned to me is, if you have to get a permit for the steps, then wouldn't you know the property line at that point? And so I didn't know what to tell them.
So what we just heard was that the steps were there, and they assumed because the steps were there, they could build the deck.
That's correct.
Okay. Well, I understand the confusion, but I will say, I'm glad there's something in the building. I'm glad it's being used for something. This is where Arch and Axe was, right? Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I think it's nice to have something rather than an empty building. But I understand the confusion. So this is just to approve a, what do you call it, hearing?
This is to set the hearing date.
Which will be within our board meeting?
Yes, it'll be an ordinance, so it'll be 3 readings next month after, the timeline is to allow for it to be published by the city clerk. And then, the resolution is essentially required by state law to set the hearing date, and then we'll consider the meat and bones of the ordinance itself, the vacate itself.
On March 18th.
Correct.
Okay. So this is just to approve the resolution 0825 of having the hearing. Is there any other discussion? Do I hear a motion to approve resolution 0825?
So move.
Second. There's a second. Was there a second? Second. Moved and seconded. Roll call.
Wiles.
Yes.
Hunt.
Yes.
Bristler.
This is consent, the way they were given.
Does the audience not speak on this? I had
If we
given,
pull it, the audience don't get a chance to speak.
well, I had asked at the beginning for anything on the consent agenda, and that was before it was
Okay.
pulled.
All right, okay. Oh, yes, sorry. I just want to make sure we're following procedure.
Allen.
I'm sorry, yes.
Carroll.
Yes.
Blair.
Yes.
Burns.
Yes. Motion passed. Next agenda item is our contracts, and the first one, letter H, is for community development. I'm sorry.
Mr. Vice Mayor,
Yes.
excuse me, Travis, just running right into you. We have a good number of people representing.
I'm going to get to that.
Okay.
We're going to do the contracts first, and then we're going to be, the very first ordinance will be
Thank you.
that, yep. The first contract is the Parks and Rec Division, Travis, on the fireworks display. If you wish to address that.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Board, Travis Cheney, Parks and Recreation Manager. Y'all have before you this evening for consideration a contract for annual fireworks display. This was a 3-year contract. The total value of the contract over 3 years is $64,500 for annual fireworks display from Premier Pyrotechnics. The city has historically maintained 3-year agreements with the pyrotechnics firms to do their annual fireworks display. Premier Pyrotechnics was the previous firm that the city had contracted with, and their 3-year contract ended this year. The city went out to bid again. The budget for fireworks has increased by $6,500 per year. Previous to 2024, it was $15,000 a year. At the board's request, that amount was increased for a larger fireworks display, and staff has kept that budget of $21,500 per year for the next 3 years, totaling $64,500. And I'm open for any questions.
Thank you, Travis. I had one question. They do provide a certificate of insurance before.
They do.
Every year, right?
Correct,
Okay.
correct.
And then I had first misread, I guess, that they require 50% of the total upon signing of the contract, but that was only for 1 year. I first thought it meant the entire amount.
No,
It's just the 1 year.
And if you pay early, you can get a slightly reduced
Yeah,
amount.
I think if we're doing a 3-year contract, we're getting 5% additional product. There's no real discount. It's more fireworks.
How many fireworks you
Yeah,
get, that's
yeah.
correct.
And so by paying a certain amount, I guess 50%, we'll get something, but definitely doing a 3-year, we're getting 5% more bang for the buck. But I just wanted to tell you that I thought this was well done. The contract, or the bid, the whole proposal, I thought was fair and well done and properly worded. And I wish everything was this thorough. I guess that's the word for it. And then the other remaining for the year is to be paid within 10 days after the display, which is good, because if they don't hold up, you don't have to pay before. You're paying the other half after.
And they typically will invoice us after the
Yeah,
4th, after
yeah.
the display.
So, anyway, I remember when we stated that we wanted a bigger show, and I think everything proved this last summer that we got a good, bigger show.
I think we did.
Yeah. Is there any other comments? Is there any comments from the public? If not, is there a motion to approve the contract for Premier Pyrotechnics in the amount of $64,500?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call?
Hunt,
Yes.
Rissler,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Carroll,
Yes.
Blair,
Yes.
Burns,
Yes.
Wiles.
Yes.
Motion passed. The next agenda item is the contract for long-range plan public water system with Burns and McDonnell for $159,750. And Kevin, were you going to address this? All right.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Kevin Moore, Public Works. This is a required study every 5 years that the city submits to the Health Department. There were 4 firms that submitted, and Burns and McDonnell was chosen by our water treatment plant staff. This will study from the river intake to the plant, the reservoirs, our storage towers, and the distribution system to make sure that we have adequate capacity to grow in the future and to serve the residents that we have now and over the next 10 to 20 years is the study range, and then it's renewed every 5 years. Staff recommends approval of the contract with Burns and McDonnell, and we are available for any questions.
Thank you, Kevin. Is there any comments from the board? Questions? Is there any questions or comments from the public? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the contract with Burns and McDonnell for $159,750.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call?
Rissler,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Carroll,
Yes.
Blair,
Yes.
Burns,
Yes.
Wiles,
Yes.
Hunt.
Yes.
Motion passed. Now, I am going to ask, out of respect to our veterans, if we can move Ordinance 2509, letter Q, to the top of the ordinance agenda. That, I believe, is what they have attended before for, so I am asking to have a motion to move that up in the agenda list.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call?
Allen,
Yes.
Carroll,
Yes.
Blair,
Yes.
Burns,
Yes.
Wiles,
Yes.
Hunt,
Yes.
Rissler.
Yes.
Motion passed, so we will jump to ordinance Q 2509, or letter Q, ordinance 2509, and I will address that to Fire Chief Dustin Kendall.
Yes, sir, thank you. So we have not received any phone calls or anything over this ordinance change for the change eliminating the sale of or shooting of fireworks for New Year's Eve. I was just gonna add to this, after looking back at our call logs for the 4th of July and New Year's Eve, fire department did not receive any calls for service in regards to fireworks injuries or incidents. And I think PD had a number of calls, maybe one call, that they reported for fireworks nuisance call on New Year's Eve. So I'm available for any questions.
Chief?
Mr. Vice Mayor.
Yes.
Dustin, or Chief, can you tell us what the changes are? Can you express those, please?
The change to the ordinance would be eliminating the shooting and sale of fireworks for New Year's Eve, and that's it.
Eliminating the sale of and the shooting of.
Correct, yes, sir.
Thank you.
The 4th remains the same as it has been.
Which is actually the second, third, and fourth,
Second,
right?
third, and fourth.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Any other comments or questions?
Mr. Vice Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to hear from our Chief of Police on this, on how things have been with how they are currently and how they may have been prior to our current status.
Mr. Mayor, ladies and gentlemen of the board, Scott Miller, Chief of Police. As in relation to prior to this ordinance, our current ordinance, we received numerous calls, especially around the 4th of July. New Year's Eve, we've typically only averaged about 3 calls prior to the ordinance passing to making it legal. After the ordinance passed, legalizing it, it dropped to less than 1 for the last 5 years. That being said, making it illegal, our call volume will rise again based on that. But we've seen a significant drop in calls for service as it relates to fireworks calls since the ordinance was passed, making it legalized. If that helps answer your question.
Thank you.
I will. Are you finishing? Yeah.
I'd like to comment on fireworks, I guess, in general. I do understand that we can have some that have maybe a medical issue or maybe a pet that would be affected by this, but I guess I'll say how I look at it. It's kind of like someone who is allergic to peanuts. If they're going to go somewhere to eat something or be where they're going to consume food, they have to be vigilant with it. It's just something that they do. They take care of who they are. And I feel like with the fireworks, if they are an issue, you know it's going to be there, and it's something you would be vigilant with. If you need someone to be with you, if an animal needs to make sure they have support at that time, I'm not here to say let's just blast them, but I do think the opportunity for us as citizens of the United States to be able to express the new year, as well as the 4th of July, I think it's good. I believe that it's better to be able to regulate how it's operated versus to make it illegal. And I think that's a proper way to look at it. So I know I will not be voting for this change.
Thank you, Reed. I'll just state that I brought this forward based upon emails our board received, calls I got, things I saw on social media, only regarding New Year's Eve and New Year's Day, and how even though we have stated times that they're legal to be shot, it never falls within that time. They go well beyond the time. They go middle of the night and the week following New Year's Day. I think part of the problem when you actually read the entire ordinance, and I read all of it, and I read the one that was before it was changed originally, and there are still a lot of regulations in this ordinance. One of them is that there could be no fireworks shot on city property. Well, I may be wrong, but I think all the streets are city property. And that's where 95% of the fireworks are shot if you're shooting them in the city of Siloam. They leave a big mess, and even if a police person shows up, they are usually long gone by then. I recall when this first was adopted, that it was several more days on the July 4th week. And we had a meeting about it and proposed changing it. And our police department said they got a lot more calls beforehand and a lot less after this was instituted. We made no change. We came back again and looked at it and reduced it by 1 day. And again, the police said we have fewer calls with this in place. I had first said I didn't care about the sales, and I think there was some mix-up in what I was asking for, but the main thing that I wanted to request we consider was no shooting of fireworks on New Year's Eve or New Year's Day. And it is because we have had this open, we've had it for several years. There have been complaints. And is it not time to at least give it a shot of disallowing it on New Year's Eve and New Year's Day for those who have medical issues, who have pets who go crazy? I don't think for New Year's people should have to get a tranquilizer for their dog. I don't think people should have to make sure they're out of town when they don't want to hear these. We're encroaching on people's freedoms of being free to enjoy their home and happiness when we encourage the use of fireworks on more than one holiday. I mean, everybody knows, we've all lived it, July 4th, Independence Day. I hate people calling it July 4th. It's not, it's Independence Day, the independence of the United States of America. And that has always been when fireworks are shot. And we opened it up when it used to not be at all allowed in the city limits. And so I think that was a big move on the city's part to allow that. But to go all the way, I mean, where do you stop? Do you then allow them on Memorial Day, on Veterans Day, on Valentine's Day? Where do you stop? And so I just think for those people in the city who have made the complaints about New Year's Eve and New Year's Day, we should listen and simply, instead of simply saying, well, the police are going to have to make more calls. We just heard they only had 3 before and 1 after. So I want one simple thing for us to consider, and that's just the not being shot off on that day. For that 2-day period. Any other comments?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Director Watts.
I have a quick question for one of the veterans. I don't know who's here to speak for them. One quick question is all I've got for you.
Can you come
Go
up
ahead and come
to
to
the
the-
podium, and the audio record has to have your name and address.
Greg Gass, 24050 East 570 Road, Concord, Oklahoma.
And I don't know if there's anybody else in the audience that this would apply to. If there is, please answer this question as well. I know last time you were here, you talked about how this was a big fundraiser for you over Independence Day.
Correct.
Do you sell for New Year's?
No.
Okay. I didn't catch that last time, and I just wanted to make sure. I'm assuming you have some comments to be made at that time?
Yes.
Okay, then I'm not going to ask any more questions right now. Thank you.
Is there anyone else on the board? Any other comments? Is there any comments from the public on this?
Greg Gass, 24050 East 570 Road, Concord, Oklahoma. I wanted to say good evening, everybody. And I know I've learned over the past month that you guys have a really difficult job. I've learned a whole new respect for what y'all do. New Year's Eve and New Year's Day, you see that coming across. But what I would like to say is when it comes to Independence Day, 1777 was our first fireworks celebration of the independence of this country. And as I've gotten the chance to kind of really think about some things since we met last, there is a certain part of that veterans have an enormous pride in, obviously, and we're joined by our citizens that way. To take a line from Francis Scott Key, rockets, red glare, bombs bursting in air. In my case, in our Veterans of Foreign Wars case, we've lived that line. And when we come our last board meeting, it was to encourage the board to continue the sales for Independence Days. That is what our main concern is. And with that, anybody got any other questions? I'll keep it short.
Yes, Lisa?
I do have a question. So how do you feel about the proposed changes?
I don't think it's a good thing or a bad thing, really. I'm kind of neutral on it. As far as New Year's Eve, people are celebrated. Is it fireworks worthy? You know, I don't know. That's kind of each individual, but that's where you guys come in that difficult decision. And there are the rights of those who get disturbed on New Year's Eve by it. And then there's the other hand of it. But I don't think in Siloam Springs that is such a significant celebration that it would be a big harm to the citizens here. And that's just my personal point of view.
Your stand is that you want to make sure we keep the 4th of July and the 4th of July sales, not just
Absolutely.
now, but a long time in the future,
Yes.
permanently.
Absolutely.
Mr. Vice Mayor?
Yes.
I want to thank you all again for coming. And I think one of the reasons you came was because you had heard talk of us possibly getting rid of fireworks and sales even during Independence Weekend.
Correct.
And naturally, you came and let us know your opinion. And then I think we backpedaled a little bit to where it was just going to be more on New Year's. I kind of feel the same way you do. Not really good, not really bad as far as New Year's, but what you said about the importance to you all of shooting off fireworks for Independence Day celebration was very impactful. And I really appreciated your perspective on it. And I'm glad that we did kind of back off on any talk of getting rid of sales or fireworks during the Independence Day celebration time. There's never been any talk of adding to the holidays other than New Year's and July 4th. I think probably if we do cut them out for New Year's Eve, it will be somewhat of a compromise for the people that are especially bothered. We even had a couple of people reach out to us and say, look, we understand Independence Day, but please not New Year's Eve. So maybe this could be a decent compromise. But I just really wanted to say express my appreciation again for just sharing your perspective. So thank you.
Anybody else?
I'll just say, I never asked for any change to the July 4th. It was only the New Year's Eve. And it was only based upon local citizens' concerns and emails. And I think that's our obligation to listen to everyone. And the only complaint was New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. There was none on July 4th or any of the July holiday. But I will say, thank you to each of you for coming tonight. And thank you for your service to our country. We appreciate your participation in the VFW, but also just in wanting to be heard. And we appreciate it a great deal. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Any other comments or questions?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes,
I
please.
appreciate, oh, no, there's more citizens.
Mr. Schultz.
Keith Schultz, County Road 556, Concord, Oklahoma. Most of my life has been spent in the town of Siloam Springs, raising kids here and everything. And again, I don't see the New Year's Eve thing as the major issue, but I think the thing that I want to probably address is even if you pass the change, I don't think that you're going to stop that much on the sales of fireworks because they're going to go outside to the county line and they're going to set up and they're going to sell fireworks. And the same people that are going to set off fireworks are probably going to do it whether we have the law on the books or not. And even though I agree that, yes, it's a good thing to address everybody's issue, my personal opinion, not that I'm going to do it, but I don't think that you're going to stop the sale of the fireworks. And everybody knows that the city likes to get their tax revenue in. And so I think you're cutting out some of your tax revenue that you could have. And just that, I just don't think you're going to detour that much of your thing that you're trying to stop. So just a personal viewpoint.
Thank you. Thank you, Keith. Anyone else?
Acting Mr. Mayor, Mike Horton, 23063 Lawless Road, which is on the line of the city limits, but there are those, and I'd just like to make an observation. I've got a little 8-year-old Yorkie that I try to give him a tranquilizer, and he chews everything in the world up while the fireworks are going off. I have no problem with the 4th of July. I can go out of town, wherever, but on New Year's, it's different, I feel like, especially in the neighborhood we're at, and being the houses are being compact closer together. I wake up the next morning and my backyard is littered with 4th of July, New Year's paraphernalia that I have contained myself of picking them up and throwing them in the trash instead on his driveway. But so far I have contained myself to that. But it's a little ridiculous, even if you put 30 minutes before midnight, 30 minutes after midnight, and then it's an hour after midnight, and then it's 2 hours after midnight, and the dog's going crazy and actually is trying to find a hiding place. But you talked about and mentioned about the littering of the street. That's how the neighbors' yards are looking. And you have some neighbors that could care less about anybody else's feelings. So with the houses being more compact together, I think it should be something that should be considered deeply, that we drop the New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Anyone else from the public?
Rebecca Wyatt, 1109 East Jewel Street. So I know this isn't like a life or death thing for most people, but I think it's cold weather in the winter when we're looking at the New Year celebration. And that's a time you can't really just get in a car and go out for several hours like you could for the 4th of July. And when it's legal, I mean, you hear it for days in my little neighborhood. It's really compacted. And there's fireworks all over the street and everything. And they are pretty. They're just a little dangerous to drive through a little bit, you know. And so I would like to have this taken off of the New Year's, but not for the 4th of July. It is nice for the 4th of July. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? I will state that, as I stated a moment ago, I have read the original ordinance and the current ordinance thoroughly, and it says by state law there are to be no rockets on sticks or bottle rockets, and I think everybody knows that still goes on. So there are things that, even though it's in our regulations, it's still, the public still gets away with it. And it's because that is almost impossible to regulate as to what kind of firework is being shot.
Mr. Vice Mayor, that does bring up a question. So where are they getting their bottle rockets? Do we have any? Okay, not in Arkansas. They're not able to sell in Arkansas. Okay. Yeah. So if it's a state law that they can't be shot off, is it a state law that they can't sell them in Arkansas?
Sterling McMurrin, 20780 Tosta Verde in Gentry. It's not a state law for bottle rockets. It's been carved out and added to the ordinance for the city. for bottle
You can't sell 'em
rockets
inside
and
city
rocket.
limits.
I thought it referenced
timing.
state law and.
All of the state-approved fireworks, including bottle rockets, would be allowed, except the city has pulled that out specifically and said no.
Okay, so we cannot sell them in
But
city
if you can go outside
limits.
of the city into the county, you can buy
Okay.
bottle rockets. And in fact, when we have our sales stand, we constantly have that question.
Where are your
Even
bottle
though we
rockets?
have the ordinance posted inside the sale, that we cannot sell bottle rockets.
Okay.
They ask why, and we have to explain it to them.
Okay.
We know they just go across the.
So if they're shooting off bottle rockets, they're not getting them from your.
That's true. Very true.
Okay, thank you. That,
And while I'm here, I'll point out a couple other things as far as New Year's go. And the police department probably understands this best, but it gets dark at 5:30, 6 o'clock on New Year's. And so the fireworks start going off about 3 hours earlier than they do on the 4th of July. It opens up a larger window of time for people to be shooting off fireworks, and that definitely causes problems, I think, for people. So there is a difference. It's not the same regarding the 4th of July and then New Year's Eve. And I believe the window right now is 13 hours, from noon to 1 in the morning on the 1st. So it's not 2 whole days, it's a 13-hour window. But of course, that's abused quite a bit. People, as soon as they buy them, they shut them off, so.
Do you know, did the state law change or something? I'm wondering if the old one said that, because I saw somewhere it said by state law regarding bottle rockets.
Yeah, I think you have to read it based on the
Verify.
ordinance.
I think you are correct, because if the state law didn't allow bottle rockets, you wouldn't be able to sell them within
Yeah.
the state. You'd be breaking the law. But
The
we're
way the
verifying.
ordinance is written is it says we obey all of the state laws, and then it adds in the caveat for bottle rockets.
well, and as close to Oklahoma as we are, it could be that they were getting them in Oklahoma,
Sure.
but it sounds like it's in Arkansas they can get them, just not in Siloam.
Excuse me. On Sherry Whitlock.
Oh, because,
They're in the
A county.
okay, that's, okay.
There's a
gotcha.
line.
Okay. Okay,
Any other questions?
I'm learning all kinds of stuff tonight, thank you.
You're saying the
Thank you.
city added the bottle rocket
Yeah,
in
bottle
its
rockets.
ordinance?
It's actually more than just bottle rockets. They use that as a term of enjoyment, I guess, to say that bottle rocket type fireworks are not allowed, but it really applies to any rocket attached to a stick.
Mr. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Any other comments or questions from the public? Any other comments or questions from the board?
Mr. Vice Mayor, I do.
Yes,
I have two questions, actually. The first one, do we know what kind of sales we have for the fireworks in January? Or I guess Christina already left. Do we know what we're looking at, what kind of sales?
I had asked these gentlemen at the last meeting, and they said they were not aware of any other. I think there were 2. During the New Year's?
correct.
Okay,
Mr. Freeze and also the one at Highland Park.
okay. Chief would probably know.
Yeah, so we issued, I think there was 2 permits issued for New Year's Eve last year.
So, but we don't know what kind of revenue we get from them.
I don't know the revenue.
I
Okay.
had Christina, sorry, Mr. Mayor, I had Christina run the numbers on that, but it's hard to split between the two on Independence Day and New Year's Day. The revenue, I can't remember the exact numbers, but it's around $8,000 to $10,000 if I remember correctly, but I
That's
will
for
have to
both.
verify that
That's
on
both
both, and
holidays.
it's really
Okay.
hard to split that
I
the way
bet
it
about a
comes
lot
in.
of it comes from Independence.
Yes.
So I have another question, and this might be a Jay, but I want to explain my question before I ask my question. I used to get a lot of phone calls going into 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, a lot, and in specific neighborhoods. So what I did is I called City Hall, and I spoke to Megan, and I said, hey, can you create these little handout sheets for me, and I'll go door to door, because sometimes it's a lack of education, it's a lack of knowledge, not knowing what the rules are. Can we not require that if they sell fireworks, that the city can give them a handout to give to everybody that purchases, that tells them what the ordinance rules are? Because sometimes they just need to know the boundaries. I mean, I do that anyway, but I'm not always going to be here. And so what I do is I come to City Hall, I get the copies, and I go to all the tents. That's how I got to know some people, is I go to all the tents and I say, can you give this to all your customers? But it's not required. Could we require it?
Mr. Vice Mayor, Jay Williams,
Yes.
City Attorney. In response, typically, the city could not require that, but the city can certainly encourage that. And probably the best way to do that is to ask the fire chief, when permits are issued, to provide a stack of the applicable ordinance so it can be posted at the stand and also handed out to the public as part of the sale. Says here's when it's legal to discharge fireworks within the city.
Well, I've noticed since I walked the neighborhoods, there was 2 major neighborhoods. I've only received 2 phone calls in the last 2 years since I've been doing that.
After putting those out.
On door. I put them on every single door in neighborhoods that I got the most calls from till 2 or 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock
Why
in the
didn't you
morning.
do them for the whole city?
I second
If I
that.
had time, I would. Maybe you should help.
Not if you're going to do it. You can do it. I think that is a very good idea, though, that when they get their permit,
That is a good idea.
we could even, I mean, you're not talking about the whole ordinance. You don't provide, you just provide the rules, the basic.
Rules, yeah. This is the hours, this is the
Right.
dates, this is, yeah.
You can only shoot them,
This is where you can
Right.
find out that, for more information.
and that may be a nice thing to be able to provide the sellers a stack of those that get inserted in every sack or something.
So the VFW contracts with Jake's Fireworks specifically. I think there's about 3 or 4 contractors that run the stands here. Jake's requires us to show the ordinance right next to the cash register and explain to people why we can't sell bottle rockets and what the rules are and the regulations within the city, when they can be shot and where. So I don't think you would have any pushback from those other contractors to have them do the exact same thing.
Thank you. That's a good idea. Thank you very much. Well, if we want to leave the sales for New Year's Day and New Year's Eve, that's fine with me. I don't have any others on that at all. I just have had so many complaints about the shooting of them is why I brought this forward.
I think it's a great compromise, because we all get those phone calls.
What is the compromise? What do you say?
Leave the sales but not allow the shooting of them? Or just
No, I
not do
think
New Year's Eve?
Just not do New
Yeah.
Year's. I think, like Mindy was saying earlier, I 100% agree. It's a compromise, and we need to find a compromise.
You mean as it's written to have New Year's Eve and New Year's Day, no shooting or sales?
No, I think we should have sales on Independence and shooting on Independence, but if,
No. I'm only talking New Year's Day.
oh, yeah. How you wrote it in this?
This in front of us is only addressing New Year's Eve and New Year's Day.
I think it's a good compromise.
So I got confused. Are you saying the sale and use or just the use prevented?
I think prevent both. If you're going to prevent one, you should prevent the other.
Okay. Is that what you were saying, Mindy?
Yeah, I was just questioning. Yes.
Is there any other questions or comments from board? Buddy? I will entertain a motion to put ordinance 2509 on its first reading, suspending the rules and reading title only.
So moved?
Moved and seconded. There's been all the discussion we can have, so roll call.
Carroll.
No.
Blair.
Yes.
Burns.
No.
Wiles.
Yes.
Hunt.
Yes.
Bristler.
Yes.
Allen.
Yes. Motion passed. Our next, thank you, gentlemen. Thank you all for being here, and thank you for letting your opinions be known. Again, we appreciate your service to our country.
Mr. Vice Mayor.
We will, oh, sorry, Alan. Oh, you're going to read it, right?
Ready, sir?
Yep.
Ordinance number 25-09, ordinance amending Chapter 38, Chapter 4 of the Siloam Springs City Code with respect to regulation of the sale and use of fireworks in the city limits.
Next agenda item is ordinance, it's letter J, ordinance 2502, the third reading of the annexation of 57.37 acres at the 20,000 block of Bruce Rutherford Road. Ben, will you address that?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor, members of the board. Ben Rhodes, Senior Planner. Yes, this is the third reading of the annexation of the land. It's about 57.3 acres on Bruce Rutherford Road. This is coming in initially as R2. However, there is another ordinance later on tonight's agenda that will change that zoning potentially. So coming in as R2, third reading annexation. We're available for any questions. Thank you.
Is there any questions or comments from the board on ordinance 2502? Is there any comments or questions from the public, from the audience on 2502?
Mr. Vice Mayor.
Yes.
Chris Baxton, Community Development Director. I just wanted to reiterate that this is attached to the other item, the PD, that will be heard later. If this item is heard, is approved tonight, then this will zone this item R2. And I just wanted to reiterate that. I know Ben just talked about that. But if the other item fails, then this item will be allowed to develop by right in R2. Just wanted to point that out. At the request of the city administrator, he wanted me to point
You're
that out
saying
during
if
this
the
meeting.
other one fails, this will still come in as R2?
This will still come in as R2, that's correct. That is the default zoning district for a new annexation. That's why the other item is a rezone from R2 to the PD.
Thank you, Chris. Mr. Vice Mayor, I just wanted to make sure Chris said that the board was very clear that if you do pass this, but the other fails, that by right, it would become an R2 and the development, a different development would come in.
Is there any comments or questions? Anybody else?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Betsy.
why does it come in as an R2 instead of an R1? An R1 is what we want more of in the city.
Mr. Vice Mayor, the default zoning district for new annexed items into the city is an R2. I could deflect to Senior Planner Ben Rhodes for additional feedback. I believe he was here whenever that item originally went through.
Yes, so the, Mr. Vice Mayor, so the R2 zone was selected as the default zone because that is the primary zone used for single family in Siloam Springs. R1 is very rare. We only have some few spots in town where that is. That's a large lot, residential. So, 95% of all the single family homes in Siloam are R2.
Is R1 more estate lots? Ben?
That's correct, yeah.
So when you said it became, when we did annexation, it became the default of R2, was that voted by the board, or was it part of code change at some point, or?
It's in our city code. I think it goes back to the 2017, 2018 update. Yeah.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Lisa.
What all can be built in an R2? Just single family?
Sorry about that. Yes, Mr. Vice Mayor, R2 allows for single family residential and parks.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
So are the lots in an R2 required to be bigger than a PD? Because PD seems like they can do whatever they want, but I would assume an R2 has a minimum size lot.
Yes, so the R2 standard lot size is 7,000 square feet. In PD, it's movable. It's custom zone, so you can change. It can do 7,000 in PD, or you can do smaller, larger, just depending on what the proposal is.
But I thought the main purpose of PD, at least that tends to come through, is to do little bitty lots. That's why they want PD.
That's what, yeah, they could go smaller. That's what I was saying. Yeah,
Yeah.
smaller or larger. Yeah.
Yeah, do they ever go larger? I don't think I've seen one go larger.
I would have to do a search. I can't tell you off the top of the cuff what all the lot sizes were. So.
Any other comments? Do we have any comments from the public on ordinance 2502? Back to the board. I will entertain a motion to approve ordinance 2502 on its third reading, suspending the rules and reading title only.
So move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Blair,
Yes.
Burns,
Yes.
Wiles,
Yes.
Hunt,
Yes.
Rissler,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Carroll.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Ordinance number 25-02, an ordinance accepting the annexation of certain territory described in the 20,000 block of Bruce Rutherford Road to the city of Siloam Springs, Arkansas, and assigning same to award.
You okay over there? Next agenda item is letter K, ordinance 2503. Oh, we need to adopt 2502. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. I will entertain a motion to adopt ordinance 2502.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded that we adopt ordinance 2502. Roll call.
Burns,
Yes.
Wiles,
Yes.
Hunt,
Yes.
Rissler,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Carroll,
Yes.
Blair.
Yes.
Motion passed. Next agenda item is letter K, ordinance 2503, the third reading for the vacation of utility easements at the 1300 block of North Britt Street. And Megan Thomas, you will brief the item.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. This is the third reading for a request to vacate utility easements at the 1300 block of North Britt Street. There have been no changes since the previous readings, and staff finds that the request meets all requirements as set forth in the City Municipal Code and state statute, and staff is available for any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Is there any comments or questions from the board? Is there any comments or questions from the audience on ordinance 2503? Roll call. Pardon? Oh,
Make a
I will
motion.
entertain a motion to
So
approve
moved.
the third reading of ordinance 2503.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call.
Wiles,
Yes.
Hunt,
Yes.
Rissler,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Carroll,
Yes.
Blair,
Yes.
Burns,
Yes.
Motion passed.
Ordinance number 25-03, an ordinance vacating and abandoning utility easements at the 1300 block of North Britt Street.
I will entertain a motion to adopt ordinance 2503.
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a
Second.
second? Second? There is a second. And this is 2503, third reading and adoption, and now the adoption. Roll call.
Hunt,
Yes.
Rissler,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Carroll,
Yes.
Blair,
Yes.
Burns,
Yes.
Wiles.
Yes.
Motion passed. Letter L, ordinance 2504 is the second reading for amending section 102-21 of the City Municipal Code, rezoning from A1 to R4, the 400 block of Meadow Court. Ben?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor, members of the board, Ben Rhodes, Senior Planner. This is the second reading of the rezoning, the request changing from A1 to R4 for multifamily. This includes 2.1 acres, as you can see on the map there. And this will also require a future land use map amendment. Staff has not received any additional public comments since the first reading, although we did get contacted by the applicant on some potential options for the property, and I believe we've directed him to get that information to the city clerk. So this meets all the requirements for city code, and we're available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Is there any questions or comments on ordinance 2504?
Mr. Vice Mayor.
Yes, Reed?
Concerning this, from what I've researched, I think it's something that can go R4. And it would have some, it would have the ability to keep going what's already happening. But my concern is, or if that's the right word, I'd just like to make sure if there's a way that we can have communication, especially I know to the north of this property, the homeowner immediately north of it, they have kind of a short backyard. I think they do have a 2-story home, so it's not like we can say, oh, you can't have 2-story, but what can we as a city do to where maybe we can have them be in communication to where, hey, maybe there's some trees are planted or something to where we have, it's an easy transition versus here you have R4 and then R2. I would like to know, do we have something that's in play already, or am I searching for something not available?
Mr. Vice Mayor.
Yes.
I think that the correct answer, and I just want to make sure that I state the actual correct answer on this first. And the correct answer on that is whenever you rezone to R4, you're entitled to develop it by right as stated in our development manual or our development regulations. So whatever it states within our regulations for R4, that's the maximum extent of what we can require once it's zoned R4. So if there are buffering requirements, and I'll turn it over to Ben to explain what the R4 requirements are. If there are buffering requirements or anything like that in R4, then yes, we can hold them to those standards. If there are not those type of regulations within the R4 development regulations, then you cannot increase those regulations during a typical rezone. Whenever you're going straight to an R4, that's referred to as a Euclidean zone, whenever you go directly to that zoning district, then all we can hold them to are the standards that are stated within that. And I can recommend to direct the rest of the question to Ben Rhodes. He would be able to explain what those regulations may be.
Mr. Vice Mayor, so what we have here is a landscape buffer requirement of 10 feet, and then along all property lines, including a 6-foot tall opaque screen along all abutting residential property lines if it's of a lower density. So it would be required to have some type of screening. Now, we have looked at other options when guarding height. So if there's a building that's 2 stories, for instance, we have required some type of plantings that would be trees that we could get up taller over time that could potentially block the view of the tops of the buildings over time. But as far as the code, it's just the 6-foot opaque screen and the 10-foot green space buffer. Thank you.
So from that, we can ascertain that there's a semblance of that home that's to the north, they still can have some hope for quality of life then. Okay, thank you.
I believe so, yeah.
Mr. Mayor?
Let me ask a question of Ben first. Ben, the one to the west, the R4 that's already there, looking at the satellite map, it looks like the northwest corner of that is not really built on. It's almost kind of raw, and I can't tell if they actually have trees already on that north side or not. It was hard to tell. Of course, it's been there a while.
Right.
So.
Yeah, when I did the site visit out there, I believe that is a detention basin.
Oh, okay.
So that's why you don't have anything built in that area. There is extensive fencing, I will say that, on the existing homes. They've already put in privacy fences. But those apartments are 2-story, just so you know that were existing.
Now, looking at the neighborhood you're talking about, the R2 cul-de-sacs, there's like a long, narrow strip of R2 just to the north of the A1 piece. Is that part of the neighborhood to the north, the narrow strip going east and west? as Reed said, they have a short yard. I didn't know if that was part of their property or if that's a
Oh, I
separate.
think I see what they're talking about. There's a little strip there.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
that might be an easement. I would probably defer to our city engineer if he knows any more about that, but that is the Copperleaf subdivision with the single family. Yep.
I wondered if it was because it's the same color. I wondered if it was part of there.
Mr. Mayor?
It's okay. That's what I thought. I just want.
I believe that's some type of easement, yeah.
No, that makes sense. Betsy?
So Reed brought up a good point about the trees, and we had this discussion last time. I mean, the idea of trees is great, but who's going to make sure it happens? Because over at Dogwood Terrace, they moved in a year ago, and it's still not happened there. So how are we going to say that this is going to happen?
If it's, Mr. Vice Mayor, if it's part of the development plan and the approved plan, we will have a final certificate of occupancy inspection where we go out to the site and we check trees and check parking spaces and if they're deficient, they don't get their certificate of occupancy. So we did go out to the other apartment complex you're referring to and check those trees, and everything was installed according to the plan.
And a lot of them are dead now. And the trees, the buffer trees, have never been put in.
Any other comments or questions?
Vice Mayor.
Yes, Brad?
Hey, so as I'm reading through the Unit Development Code, and I know we're not there yet, but it's, I have several issues here, obviously. I know the townhouses were one. I mean, they're just as significant. This drainage, the retention pond is shallow. So I know we have to address all those things. The number one thing that the resident didn't like was noise and light, right? So I think townhouses solve that problem. One of the things we asked from them was just there is a rise, so that is going up slope still. And so we're looking for some other, obviously by the third reading, I guess we're going to get some renditions or whatever they were working on. But how do we solve that problem? We inspect the trees die. So as I'm glazing through the UDC, and I could be 1,000% wrong, but there's something in there, 180-day a bond, am I correct? I've been taking Prevagen, so I'm feel pretty good now.
Mr. Mayor.
Not true. Anyway, and so that is, how do we solve that problem? Because I'm with that. We just did a tree planting along the trails. Some of them are dead. What's the survivability rate? That's called trees. If the developer does not maintain those, the trees are going to die. How do we hold them accountable? How do we keep them there? Is that correct on the UDC? Is that problem solving?
Mr. Vice Mayor, Kevin Moore, Public Works. We have addressed some of that in the UDC. So currently, it's a code enforcement action if landscaping, trees, and whatnot die. With the UDC, we're proposing actually a bond in place for a certain amount of time to where if the landscaping dies, then the city would have the ability to require or contract for the trees to be replaced. Typically, like 20% of the trees or so is what I think we were looking at that bond covering.
So as this goes into the third reading and as this develops, is there a window where we can attach that to this so we don't end up with the problem that they had over on the other side of town?
It would depend on when the significant development comes through. So it would have to come through, if it comes through before the UDC, then it comes in under our current code requirements.
And the downside to code enforcement, and I like the guys there, it's one of our weakest links in Siloam Springs. It's a weak link, always has been. It's a tough one. And so if we don't adapt it, we can't rely on code. We failed. So the only way to do it is we've got to hold that out there, and we've got to the trees have to have that time to establish themselves. And the other recommendation would be if you plant a tree in July, it will die. I mean, that's just how life works. So as that develops, we have to understand that in order for it to be successful, we have to follow the recommendation and the guidelines of anybody that's ever planted a tree in their life, right? So, let's make that happen, because I don't want to end up with a problem butting up against a residential, right? Because let's know Copperleaf's already got a little thing going on Copperleaf. It's coming up next. So let's give the folks there a chance. And I'm still concerned with traffic flow, and I'm still concerned with the condition of that street as presently sits. It's cement and it's sinking. And the gentleman approached before is the concern with that development is that we can't enforce occupancy load even though our piece of paper says it's a one-family dwelling. But we know what's happening on there based on the number of cars available, and that's the other concern. They addressed it by townhouse, and I'm sure they're going to do something else to try to make us happy, but that's the concern. Those are significant concerns for the folks next door. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Brad. Yes, Ken?
I agree with what's been said, and I certainly don't have an issue with the project itself. I think it would be fine. It'll fit in. But I, too, am concerned about drainage and emergency vehicles. I think we brought those 2 points up last time. So I'm old, my mind fails me. Remind me, we, at a later time, when plans are a little more finalized, we will have another opportunity to look at this and scrutinize it more than what we are now. Is that right? Or where am I?
Mr. Vice Mayor, so one of the things that has changed since the last time this item was heard is the possibility of changing it from one type of unit to another. And I just want to expand on that a little bit, is that since this is a rezoning development permit, this is a rezoning, and I've heard from some of the board members that wanted to look at it from it, they're not concerned about what the developer is proposing. And I just want to also reiterate that just because the developer has indicated some of the stuff that he wants to do at this location, we've already seen some deviation from that based off of some conversations with staff. I just want to reiterate that once it's rezoned to R4, then he can do anything by right within that R4. So any conversations that we do have relative to development, they're not bound to that unless it's a part of the development code. As far as what they would be required to go through in the future, depending on the size of the project and depending on the submittal requirements for certain size projects, if it met the requirement of a significant development permit review, it would trigger the process for our TAC review. So our TAC review incorporates the fire department, quite a few different divisions within the city. They do, for example, the fire guys look at it and they would make sure that it meets all the fire codes. That's if it gets to the significant development or a preliminary plat requirement. Another option that has been talked about is the possibility of duplexes. I don't know how that would impact this specific parcel that was zoned R4, but I believe that no matter what they submit, whenever they're coming in for their building permits, at that time, that's when they would come in they would get a review by planning to determine if a significant development permit or if any other type of permits would be required. If it did trigger those additional TAC review considerations for the significant development permit process, then yes, they would go through fire, get a review. They would go through engineering for drainage considerations to meet our drainage criteria manual. And Kevin, I would see if Kevin has anything to add to that.
I would just add and say, if it's a significant development or a preliminary plat, it would come back before this board. If it's a lot split and then building permits, then there's possibility it would not come back before this board. It would be just building permit level.
Okay, thank you. Excuse me. I do have to say, I mean, our decisions, my decision is based off what we heard last time. Now you're saying that things have changed, and we don't know what those changes are. So that now leads me to possibly change my mind. I don't know that I can approve something that I don't know what the plan is. And just to say, and I understand, you know, if we say, yes, it's an R4, that's a broad category. But we were presented last time with townhomes, and that's what was talked about, that's what was presented to this board, and that's what information we were using to base our decisions. Now we're hearing that may not be the case. And so I am not going to be very supportive of something that could be this, could be that, we just don't know yet.
Mr. Vice Mayor.
Is it? Oh, Jay, yes.
Jay Williams, City Attorney. I would simply remind the board that the board has broad power and broad discretion to rezone property. The second part of that is when a property is rezoned, the owner of that property has broad power and broad discretion to build whatever the owner chooses to build, so long as it meets that new category that it's been rezoned to. We can bring in all the concept plans and other things that we might want to bring in connection with a proposed rezoning, but once it's accomplished, whatever's allowed in that zone is what the developer is allowed to build.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Ken.
And Jay, thank you, and I understand that, and I appreciate that, but to me, it's, you know, we were kind of led down a road that this is what was being possibly thought about, and now we're hearing that's not the case, or very, and yes, I'm not questioning his right, but to just say, you know, to have no direction, no idea. I mean, I have an issue with that, and I know it's a fine line, but based off of what we were told, you know, before, and now we're saying, well, you can forget that because that's not what we're doing, and that's where I have to kind of tap the brakes.
And I will say, Ken, if you are uncomfortable voting on this now and wish to have more questions, you can make a motion to table. I have a question just for the public's comment. Ben, R4 is apartment buildings or less, right?
That's correct. Townhomes, apartments.
That's the most compact of people, number of people. R3 is duplexes.
Yes.
Is it also quadplexes or just duplexes?
Just duplex only.
Just duplexes.
Yeah.
And then we've already said R2 is single family and R1's bigger single family. Okay.
It's a big jump from R3 to R4.
So if the gentleman gets this zone to R4, he could put in R3, correct? I mean, he could go duplexes if he chose.
Yes.
R4 allows you to do anything
Yes.
up to.
That's correct.
I just wanted to clear that up. Anybody watching TV, I just wanted to make sure it's all clear. Is there any other comments from the board?
Mr. Vice Mayor.
Any questions? Hang on. Mindy?
Yes, I do. Okay, so this is a difficult decision, just like the person that wants to do this development wants to make sure that he can do it before taking the next steps and purchase. It's kind of hard for us to be able to make a decision when we don't maybe have all the information. And that's what makes this really tricky. And I kind of agree with some of the comments that were made that we felt, we were told that we were going to have some townhouses there, which do match the area. I had concerns, as you know, about the number of units that could go in that particular amount of space. And I have some of the same concerns about some sort of buffer, especially with that house that's just to the north of this area. But a couple of other concerns that I have, I think Director Burns brought this up the last time about the slope. It's just a slope piece of property. And I don't know if the same thing would happen here as it did before, but I know one of the first issues that was brought to me as a board member was a man that lives in used to, doesn't anymore, lived in a neighborhood north of there. I think it may be called Meadowbrook neighborhood. It's just past one of the brand-new developments on the east side of Don Hill. Anyway, his backyard flooded so badly, it was like a river going through his backyard. And it was coming from all that farmland there that this particular property borders and is sloped down. So that definitely is a concern. What's going to happen to everything down below? So there are just several things. Now, it does sound like there are other options, but I'm also hearing that it doesn't really matter what their options are. If we say, yes, you can zone it to R4, then they can do whatever R4 allows, right? So I don't really have any questions. I'm just making some comments, I guess, just sort of supporting some of the other directors' comments about just some of the.
Mindy, you have a good point. I mean, we always talk about drainage, and if there's slope already. I drove to the end of not this one, but Copperleaf, and that whole property to the east is really sloped.
Well,
and if there is going to be houses built there someday, that's going to be more drainage, so.
Well, I don't know. These are just things that we might have more information in a couple of weeks, and I hope we do. But I just.
This is the second reading, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So in a couple of weeks, we'll have the third.
The question we always are addressing is drainage, no matter what. Wherever we are in the whole city, we have to make sure, because we don't want to approve this and the gentleman build it, and then whoever gets in there, within 5 years, there's major flooding.
Yeah, and it might not be there, it would be.
Yeah, well, yeah.
So.
Any other comments or questions?
Mr. Vice Mayor.
Yes.
I did want to point out, and I know that we haven't gone to I believe we haven't gone to the public comment, but the applicant is present if there's any additional questions.
I was going to ask about that,
Yes, and they also have their engineer with them.
Pardon? Oh, yeah, that's right. It's not technically 2 weeks. It's 1 week until the third reading.
That's right, we have one more week.
Because we pushed the meeting back, so it is 1 week until the third reading. Any other comments from the board before we go to the public? I will open it to the public if there's any comments from the public and if the property owner wishes to make a statement.
The first to address the duplex issue, that was just if the development were to fail, if this zoning were to fail, that's just a backup plan. He prefers to do townhomes. To address the issue with the oh, I'm sorry. My name is Jason Ingalls. I'm with Expedient Civil Engineering, 9200 Suitsus Drive, Bella Vista. Thank you. To address we did put together, I mean, I can pass this around. Of course, we can't, we're not married to this. This is just a possible concept layout that has the contours on it, like you asked, that shows the entrance and how we would, the land does slope like this towards the apartments, but the way that this little concept that we've done, again, you can't hold us to this, it's just an idea, is they can be stair step down. In other words, this could be this elevation, step down 2 feet to this level, step down 2 feet to this level, that type of thing. So that's what we can do as engineers with grading. As far as capturing that runoff from the east, we'll be required by city regulations in their drainage manual to collect that, detain any increase in runoff before we release it from the site. That's our job as a civil engineer. That's one of the things we have to take care of. Now, do we always get it right?
Happened.
Sometimes we don't. We try to, as best we can.
I don't know what happened in the neighborhood just north of there, but this poor gentleman's property was just a river in his backyard.
I see.
But it was a little ways north. So.
And lots of times what the general public doesn't realize, and me as an engineer, we've had properties that have had existing drainage problems. And we come in as the engineer and we'll actually fix a drainage situation because the developer is putting money into that development. He's fixing some of the drainage concerns for the neighbors. We've actually had that occur too. So it goes both ways sometimes.
Do we know if there's a drainage issue there now?
Mr. Vice Mayor, we do know that there's a close proximity to a special flood hazard area. It's within 200 feet not to this one, it's to the property that you were referencing, I believe. That's just to the north.
You mean it's FEMA floodplain, is that what you're saying?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay.
What you handed us.
The property that I was talking about, which is up at is it Meadowbrook? Is that what it's called? That?
Yes, Meadowbrook and Meadowbrook Circle.
Okay.
Yes, yeah. The floodplain starts there near Don Hill. So this one, I'm aware of the gentleman in the Copperleaf subdivision that has, because that field, that A1 to the east is like a 7 or 9% grade. Basically, into that subdivision, those houses weren't built up at all. These would need to meet our requirements, so these would be built up to prevent there from being an issue with this proposal that's being considered now.
Okay.
So, are you done, Mindy? I'm sorry.
Yes, I'm just.
Let me
looking at
just ask you, on what you handed us, these are all the parking places.
That's correct.
These to the west are apartment buildings,
That's correct.
but you're building townhomes where these rectangles are.
Correct.
And
then
how many units would be in each townhome?
I believe they're quadplexes, so they're two-story,
It
but
says
they're.
quadplex, yeah.
Yeah, so I think
That's what I wondered.
there'd be
So
4
there's
units in
1,
each
2,
building.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7 quadplexes.
And we learned that the parking that would be required, they can't count the garages, so we tried to do a layout to provide 2 spaces per unit as proposed, excluding the garage. There'll be some that will get parked in, but some probably will get crammed with junk, so people
So
will
these are a
park in.
townhome with a garage on the first floor?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's our first proposal with this.
Any other comments or questions? Yes, Ken?
Justin, have you seen this drawing? Okay. I'm still concerned about emergency vehicles.
Yes. I believe, I don't know if, I hate to cut you off, but I don't know if we'll have to sprinkler these buildings. I guess the fire chief can answer that. But sometimes with these quadplexes in some of the other cities, we've had to do a 13D system, which is not the full sprinkler system, but it's a system that works basically off the same line that feeds your toilets and your sinks. As the fire were to melt there's a mechanism in the ceiling, it's a sprinkler head, the heat heats up, it melts it and opens up a valve and it puts the fire out. That's what they call a 13D system. Lots of these types of developments, that's what we have to do. If you're over, to meet fire code. I'm not sure if that's required here, if the city of Siloam has adopted that, but in other cities, we've had to do that. So.
Well, if it wasn't before, it is now, since you brought it up.
Well,
I have no idea. Chief will know.
Yes.
I'm still not satisfied, but I mean, that's me. It's something, I will vote for this tonight, but I will have a lot of questions before the next meeting.
Sure.
And so I just say that as a warning to staff because I will be coming to visit. I'm not leaning that direction, but, maybe they can show me something I'm missing, but.
I was just about to say that staff need to be prepared with the amount of questions that come up here tonight.
Yeah.
Between now and, we only got 1 week, it's not 2 weeks.
Mr. Vice Mayor?
Yes, Brad.
So you're talking about doing a water closet in these facilities, in essence? The sprinkler system?
No, the 13D system doesn't require a backflow preventer. It works off the standard meter. They upsize the meter. The same line comes in and feeds your sinks.
Is there an increased insurance with the renters? I could just see a good time being had there, my friend. I'm a retired fireman, so I'm going to get a little sarcastic.
we're good.
My concern is, with Director Wiles, is, the more we talk about this, the number one thing on there is your approach going into converting that A1. And the longer we have this conversation and we consider it and we're talking ourselves into bombarding you on the third reading, and I can just tell you right now, it's going to end up being a no because these folks are going to spend this next week. It looks like an R3 area, that's the best solution for everybody here. I'm going to vote no again, only because I just don't think it sets up for an R4 because there's so much negativity on the front space. The access is so limited on that dead-end cul-de-sac. It's that rendering there, it just doesn't sit well. And number one, from a safety standpoint, and number two, from a city services standpoint, one of the things in our, when we start looking at these planned developments, we get in on the front end. Are you comfortable with us tabling this? And that gives you more time to prepare? So we don't have to start over again?
I mean, I'll let the developer speak to that. I'll let him come up and talk to that. I can't talk to that.
That's just me speaking. I'm not, there's 6 other folks here.
Yeah, good evening. Brian Trucks, 609 Atlanta Street, Gravett. So after the first meeting, listened to everything, I got to thinking about what would be better and everybody be happy with, possibly doing not a 2-story, but a 1-level structure, duplex, 3-plex, whatever, 4-plex, but doing a 1-level. And then I believe I talked with Megan. She said a duplex would have to be R3, and we would start over. So I would be fine with that, because since the first meeting, I've had more feedback and positive for duplexes. So I would be fine with that. So does that answer?
Yes, I just
curious. And at first looking at the property, everything Meadow Court is pretty much R4, and so I thought, well, it'll join right in, and we'll do an R4. I'll do townhomes, nice townhomes. So, but
Mr. Vice Mayor?
Yes, yes, Alan?
If I may. Just trying to understand your concerns, because I've had conversations with Chris, because he's had conversations with you. Are your concerns more, because he said you would go duplexes. Is it a concern that we have to go back through this process and planning commission, and that's going to set you behind? That helps the board to know that if you're kind of planning to go there.
Yeah.
If we decide to do this now, you might be better pulling this now and then coming back as an R3 if you read what the board is telling you. Because even if we table this, then we have to have, we will meet next week, and then it'll be 2 weeks after that. And if they say no, you're already starting over. So again, if that's the process, Chris, I don't know if there's any quicker way to get through that. But I just wanted to, from the conversations I've had this week, that's why Chris brought it up earlier to the board, that they were thinking instead of doing the 4 is going to 3, but let's let this ride where they didn't have to go over the whole process again. But I wanted Chris to make sure the board was clear. If you zone that, they could come back later. Not saying he would do that, but as an R4, they can come back and build whatever they want at that time. So,
But if he
Chris,
requested, we could amend it to be R3?
Mr. Vice Mayor.
Yes.
This has already been held on the first reading, I believe. So I believe since it's already had its first reading.
No, we can make an amendment.
You can make an amendment, but I believe that starts the reading process over. However, I would point out that this also has been, this is subject to a public notice requirement. I would have to deflect to legal whether or not that would have to go back through a public notice requirement with the new zoning determination or the new zoning request. because all of the public notice that has gone out to the surrounding property owners states that it's requested rezone to an R4.
Well, what I was about to say is I didn't know if it would be able to be amended anyway, because if he was going to change what was built, if it would, as was said, have to start over. So, but if it's not dependent on what he's going to build, and we wish to change the zoning, that's been done many times before in the between readings. What, Lisa? You have a question?
So you're saying we can't change it to an R3 at the board's request, and it might cause a delay in the process, but not as big of a delay if he has to start all over?
Well, I think the question is the notice that's already been published to all the adjoining landowners at R4. And so I think the proper way to proceed, I think we're going to have to give new notice that says R3 if the developer chooses to proceed with R3. The board has the ability to speed up the readings, certainly, but I still think the required notice to the adjoining landowners is going to have to put them on notice it's R3 instead of R4.
And what's the notice length? Like 21 days? Is it 30 days, 21 days? What's the length?
Mr. Vice Mayor, the notice requirement is 15 days prior to the public meeting, but we would need to go back to Planning Commission. So what you could do is remand to the Planning Commission and then require the applicant to redo the notice. Would probably be one option to consider.
Mr. Vice Mayor?
Yes.
Our planner two, Megan Thomas, had some additional information she wanted to share that I think that the board would find important for this conversation.
Chris has already gone well over 5 minutes, so you now have as long as you want, Megan. Go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. Megan Thomas, Planner 2. I just wanted to point out, if we are going to change this to an R3 zoning, just be aware all of these conversations we've had about opaque screening, landscaping requirements, drainage, significant development, all of those things go out the window because we don't do significant developments on duplexes. We don't require opaque screening on lesser density for duplexes. We don't require opaque screening buffers or anything like that really for a duplex.
But if it was one story, it might not be a concern.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's up to y'all.
No, that makes sense.
Just be aware that those things are different for R3.
Any other comments or questions? Any other comments from the public?
Mr. President, this is a complicated issue. I just want to make sure all the information is to the board. So just to be very clear about this, it's one lot. So if we're going to R3, the maximum you can build is one duplex. So just 2 units total for the entire property. Now, he could come back and split those and do a plat, a preliminary plat. But that, of course, would have to go back to Planning Commission as well and go through the whole process. But as it is right now, if it was changed from R4 to R3, he'd only be allowed to put one duplex on the property.
Mr. Mayor.
If he had done planned development, would that have allowed him to put multiple duplexes in one side and quads on them?
Potentially, typically a duplex is one per lot. And the issue is it's one big lot. And you don't have that with multifamily because you do a multifamily like apartment complex on a bigger lot and you have many units with that. But with the smaller scale density, like single family and 2 family, that are always on by the lot. So that's what the issue is here.
I just now was noticing this map. All of this to the west that's already built. This isn't even really a street, is it? It's more of a parking lot.
Yeah.
I was just looking at this thinking, all this time I've been thinking, this is a street that I think Reed or somebody said is concrete, we're gonna have to take care of it. But that's not even really a street right up to there. They're just driving into a parking lot as it is now, right?
Mr. Vice Mayor, I think
Yes.
that's why staff was in support of the amendment to the comprehensive plan that would have been appropriate for this location because the only access to this point is through that at this point in time. Of course, it's considered developable property to the east, but as of right now, the only way to get into this area is through that, essentially a parking lot. So.
Do we know, does our actual, like, street responsibility go to this line now?
I believe that is a access easement, so it's a private drive.
Okay. So I think it goes to the beginning of that last.
If I recall correctly,
lot.
yeah, I think you're right. It's on Mount Olive, it's private drive, and then the next parcel has right-of-way dedicated, even though there's not public access to it. And then, yeah, it's kind of isolated there, but with a private access drive.
Just curious.
So we do
Mr.
not
Vice
maintain
Mayor.
Who? Mindy?
So I think I mentioned this last week, and I'll mention it again. When I first read the staff report on this one, and this is what the Planning Commission had as well, bullet point number 3 under the general summary was the applicant states in the letter of intent that if the property is successfully rezoned, it will be used to construct 2 or more duplexes. And while, yes, the term or more was there, I'm thinking more, 2, 3 duplexes, and then, or quadplexes. And then last week, it seemed like we were maybe 4, and now what we've been presented is 7. And so it feels a little bit like we're going in the wrong direction. I don't have an issue with the quadplexes so much. I just have an issue with the number of quadplexes in there. And as I've said, the sloping property and the street / parking lot that you have to go through to get there. But with all that said, we went from 2 to 4 to 7. Obviously, 7 is much more income potential for the developer. But now we're talking about maybe being okay with R3, but that's a big difference in income right there. So, I mean, is that really going to be something that the developer's going to want to do? Now, you talked about lot splits, but how many times could you split the 2 acres? And is that a question I can ask?
He's going to answer.
Mr. Vice Mayor, yeah, what the applicant would likely do is the preliminary plat, where they would do multiple lots, as many would be allowed, and build in public infrastructure, such as a very short cul-de-sac of some sort, very similar to what you see in the Copperleaf subdivision just north of there. Of course, it has to be engineered and laid out based off the lot size. I don't know how many lots you could fit in there, but that would be the logical step that they would probably take if it was zoned R3.
I do have one small question.
Sure.
In other towns that we've done, I've done developments in Fayetteville before where we've put multiple duplexes on one lot. So is that just how your code is written?
That's correct.
Technically, or, because that seems a bit odd compared to other cities.
You
or
can
just
do,
out of the usual that we're used to dealing with. So
you can do multiple duplexes on an R4 lot. The issue is, are we changing it from R4 to R3? If you keep it at R4, you could do duplexes, you could do townhomes, you could do an apartment complex, you can do many variety of things all on one lot.
Yeah.
Once you lose that R4, you lose that ability, that flexibility.
I see. And to answer your question again, we went to 7. Again, I think we spoke about this last time. We haven't actually done the drainage calculations. It's possible. If you look how big of a space they provided for a detention pond north of us, it's possible we won't get 7 units there. That was just a possible maximum that we could possibly
Right,
get
and I
on there.
understand, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I appreciate, you're telling us what your plans are. It's, but again, there's so many unknowns. There's unknowns for you all, there's unknowns for us. It's
Yeah.
tough.
It is.
Tough decision for all of us.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Thank you for your input, though. I appreciate it.
Any other comments from the board or from
Mr.
the
Vice
public?
Mayor.
Pardon?
Yes, I do.
Yes, Lisa?
I want to say, I agree with Director Burns and all the comments he's made. I agree with Director Blair and Hunt. And as Jay has made it clear, once we make it an R4, anything can be done with it. And I'm going to say, You don't know if you're going to own it tomorrow. You don't know if you're going to be here tomorrow. So if we zone that in R4, we can't guarantee what's going to be in there. You can make all the plans you want, and I guarantee you there's not anything that says you'll be here tomorrow. So for us to put it as an R4 is putting it on whoever has that. So you can't say what can happen for sure until it happens. So my concern is I hate costing somebody time, especially a developer, because that's where we get our money, my family. And so I understand it, and I don't want to have to put somebody through additional time. And we've looked at trying to cut some of our times because it is a pain. But I believe that for me, I will be voting no because I think it should be an R3. I'm sorry.
Even if we can only get one duplex on that parcel, because you're looking at a parcel that'll never get developed because it's somewhat of a unique parcel. It's R4 to the west. I mean, it could be, I guess, sold to the developer to the east if that were going to be single family, but that little parcel's not big enough for him to really make that worth his while.
Even
in
as
my professional opinion.
duplexes, because, I mean, the less money you
Something
put
that can
into
be
it.
done with the R3.
Do what now?
Sounds like there's something that can be done with the R3 that would
make money, an investment. It's a good investment, even at R3. It's not, I mean, because it depends on your build cost, and there's so many variables that go into how you're going to make that money.
Yeah.
And so even if you built residentials and flipped them, you can make money. I mean, but I know you want greater capacity there, but we got to remember to be good neighbors, and we're not always good neighbors. And we've had people make promises to us in the past that didn't fulfill those promises. And so, and like I said, you can't guarantee that you're going to be here tomorrow. My husband died at 45 years old. He didn't think that he was going to be gone. We had plans, but we didn't get to fulfill them. So there's no guarantee that you guys are going to be here. So I hate to make a call on something that you might not even be there.
I'm going to intercede here, and I'm going to say you have a couple options. We're on second reading. To go forward, you have to pass through the third reading. So you can risk that this is voted down tonight, of which you're dead. There's no third reading, nothing. It could be tabled for future, or you could go back to the drawing board and change it to an R3. There's a couple, three different options, but I'm just saying, be aware if there is a no passage tonight, there is no third reading.
You know, what if he just tabled it?
Well, we have to make a motion to table if that's your desire.
But then that would give him a little bit of time to think about whether he just wants to withdraw it or not, instead of just making that right here on the spot right now, is what I'm saying.
That is fair if you wish and the board wishes to make that motion.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Ken?
As I look at this, the aerial view, the satellite picture here, and I'm not an engineer, I'm just going off of what I see, and this is going to be, give or take, I think, hopefully fairly accurate. You might correct me. Based on what's to the west, I mean, honestly, I don't think you can get 7 buildings in there. I'm seeing at the very most 4, because I'm going to push really, really hard to make sure that emergency vehicles either have a cul-de-sac to turn in, or they're going to have, I'm sorry, I forget how you called it, but where they can pull in and back up far enough to then pull out. So if you're going to dedicate anything on the east side where our biggest fire truck can pull in all the way, back up all the way, and pull out all the way, I don't see how you can get more than 4
Actually,
units.
I've laid it out that way. There's Appendix D of the fire code allows 3 or 4 different options, and one of them is a hammerhead.
Well, and that's fine. I don't have a problem.
Those drives are,
It's
that's what.
I understand. I know what a hammerhead is. I'm telling you I don't have a problem with townhomes, what you came to us with before. I mean, I'd almost put money, you cannot put 7 units in there. And honestly, I'm almost offended that you'd even bring a picture with 7 in here. I mean, because we have to make, as they have been saying, decisions based on what we are told and what we think would be best suited. You can't put 7 there. Why would you even show us that you're gonna, that's not even an option. Now, can you put 4 in there with a hammerhead? Yeah, I think you can. And if you can do that, and the fire chief is comfortable with it, police is comfortable with it, and drainage can be shown that it's not gonna be a problem, I'll be your biggest fan.
Yeah.
But to come in here and try to sell us something that you cannot even come close to accomplishing is a waste of our time, honestly, okay? And again, I'm not against what you're trying to do until you come in here and say, you're blowing it up, and you can't. I mean, let's be real. Let's live in reality and show us what you can do. And if you've got 3 or 4 different options, let's see them. I'm open to that all day long, but.
Well, we'll go back and punt and see if we can do that. But I really think, I think he would probably recommend it, just probably table it here tonight, if you guys could do that, and then give him some time. He may decide to withdraw it, come back as an R3, but that'll give him a little bit of time to make that decision. So, do you want to? You want to speak?
So when I went back and looked at it, what Jason had drawn, the plots for the fourplex, I was thinking I could do 2 duplexes in that same space, that same dimension, and not have to replat the lot or just be cut down to 1 duplex for the parcel. So, and get down to one level, fourplex or 3plex, whatever was allowed. I would rather do the 1 level than the 2 level.
And that's
at
fine,
this point.
but even if you decided you wanted to do 2 levels, you put 4 of them in there, I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, I don't know what.
Just be realistic with what you're presenting to us so we can have something, like Lisa says, we have to live with this.
Yeah.
You don't. You draw it up, you're gone.
I tried to reach out to the owner on the east side with the larger parcel to see what possibly they may have planned in the future and would he possibly want to access or a through street maybe or something. It could be done at this point, but I wasn't successful at talking to anyone. So.
Chris, what is our best option if he's wishing to now make changes? Can he make changes if we table this?
If we're trying to change it from R4 to R3, then the best option would likely be a withdrawal, and then start.
But if he wishes to change to keep it as is to R4, but simply build different than what he's first proposed.
Yeah,
we can't do it.
Then we could table it because the question is rezone, right?
Just build another.
It's rezoned to R4.
If it's rezoning to R4, despite any agreements that he makes, then he can do anything that's allowed
That's
in
true.
R4.
That's right. Yep.
That we can't bind anything to that rezone itself. There's, for example, with a PD development, you can bind things to those because that allows the law allows us to do that. But with this type of zoning, we can't bind anything to that zoning district.
I'm just asking, what is your recommendation now? Should we?
I think he's asked to table.
Pardon?
I think he has asked to table.
But I'm asking if we table and he wishes to make changes, is the tabling going to do any good?
I think from an administrative standpoint, there's not going to be a difference in the tabling and then holding it at this reading. That would allow him to still have time to look at it. The only difference is the tabling can be put off to a further date than the next week.
I was going to say we need to at least say the second March meeting, or should we say indefinitely until he tells you he's ready to put it back? We have done indefinite tables.
Vice Mayor, if I may.
Yes.
I was sitting here looking at the dates. I think we could put it to the 18th because all the conversation I'm hearing, we only have 4 days.
No, I'm
to
saying
get to next
18th at the
Tuesday.
earliest.
The
I'm saying
earliest, we could
earliest.
probably
I'm
the
saying
18th.
if you'd rather it go to April,
We do need a date that's specific for continuity of public notice. So the tabling indefinitely until they're ready would not maintain that public notice.
So should we say the second board meeting of March or the 1st of April?
Either one of those would be fine with me as long as my staff feels that they would have time to work with the applicant on that.
That's 3.5 weeks. Cindy?
Yeah, so if we table it, and then the applicant decides that he does want to do something different, like do the R3 instead, then he can withdraw it between now and then, and you can start getting notice out for R3, right?
That a withdrawal can occur by the applicant, and then they can start the process over
Right.
for an R3. Yes.
So you wouldn't have to wait until the 18th to make your next decision. So if you decide. But the reason I even brought up the R3 and how I understand, you want more income potential. R4 is going to give that to you. R3 is not going to give you as much, and it sounds like you thought that you would be allowed to do more. But I think I'm hearing from staff that there are some possible options for doing more with R3, so it sounds like you all do need to have some discussions. And then we need to decide whether he wants to withdraw and we kind of start over again.
If we kept it at R4 and tabled it and came back at the next meeting or whatever meeting for R4, between then and now, could he give a different proposal and we lock him in on 2 duplexes and 4 quadplex? No, that's not possible.
Unfortunately, you can't do that. No.
Okay, that's what I think the board wishes, but I didn't know if that was possible, so.
No, but he could withdraw and then come back
With a different,
with
yeah.
a different.
Yeah.
Mr. Vice Chair,
Yes,
I just want to point out submittal day is on Monday. And so if he does intend to withdraw and resubmit for an R3, then he needs to figure that out by Monday.
what day is?
Monday is submittal day for March submittals. So if he intends to withdraw and resubmit as an R3 and intends to hop on that cycle, then he will have to submit that by Monday, or he will have to wait until April to submit.
Okay.
That's my concern, Vice Mayor, is because if we wait till the 18th, that's going to put you and I'm trying to be very cognizant of your time. It puts you back 3 to 4 weeks to start this process all over again, Planning Commission. This could set you back 10, 12 weeks where you might follow Megan's advice or the board, because it doesn't sound like the board, from what I'm reading, is going to zone this to an R4. Because again, like we've tried to make it very clear, even if your best intention to tell us today is that you're going to do duplexes, once it's R4, you have the right to build whatever you want on it.
Oh, really?
And the board has been burned like that before, and I just that would not be something that I would ask the board to do. Not saying you would do anything like that, it's just from the history.
I was thinking that the development proposal would come back for approval, whatever, to be built,
Yes, sir, I'm just trying to help you any way I can to help you speed it up.
But if we approved the R4 and it goes through the 3rd reading and gets approved and everything, you could still bring it back and have 7 buildings, which I think you've heard is beyond what I think the board is wanting to have, but you'd be able to. So that's where I think there's some reluctance to just automatically go to R4. So do we believe the March 18th is the best date for a table, or?
Yes, Mr. Vice Mayor, that would work for staff to work with the applicant.
Do I hear a motion to table to the March 18th meeting?
So moved.
So moved. Is there a second? Second. Any discussion on the table to March 18th meeting?
No, but can we be told if he does
Yes.
change it? Can staff notify us immediately?
We can provide that information through the city administrator's office.
Thank
Roll call.
Bristler?
Me? Yes.
Allen?
Yes.
Carroll?
Yes.
Blair?
Yes.
Burns?
Yes.
Wiles?
Yes.
Hunt?
Yes.
Motion passed
Mr. Mayor,
to table. Yes.
I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
I'm going to ask for not a 5-minute, but a 6-minute recess.
Okay. I was
that
going to ask
okay?
for 7, but 6 is fine.
6-minute recess. Call the meeting back. Gonna have to call the meeting back. Been 8 minutes on a 6-minute recess.
Would you like to have it? No, you sure? Share.
So our next, everybody here?
Mike?
Alan? Waiting on you. Our next agenda item is Ordinance 2505. The second reading, amending Section 102-21 of the City Municipal Code, rezoning from R2 to R3, the 339 and 349 of East Copperleaf Drive. Ben?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor and Board. Ben Rhodes, Senior Planner. So this is the second reading, 339 and 349 East Copperleaf Drive. The proposal is to rezone from R2 single family to R3 two family. And this is occurring on the survey you see at the very bottom there. It's 0.614 acres. And this would allow for 2 duplex lots. This meets the minimum code requirements for rezoning. Staff's available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Any comments from the board, questions?
Mr. Vice Mayor,
Yes, very,
on the last time I did have, I abstained. I did speak with council to see if that was something I needed to stick with or if I could be involved with, but he recommended that I keep with the abstention, so thank you.
any other comments or questions?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Betsy?
So I have a few things, and like I said, last time, there's an entire street of duplexes, catty corner, a couple hundred feet away. There are apartments on the south side. Mr. Mayberry sent us an email, and he talks about dozens and dozens of multifamily units that have been approved within a quarter mile of these lots. There are a dozen more, another quarter mile off of Lawless. There are dozens and dozens approved not far away across from Web Wheel. This is not, putting 2 nice brick duplexes there is not a stretch for the area. I mean, there are lots of duplexes right there. He also said in one of his emails that when he purchased these lots, he asked if there would be any issues getting them rezoned to R3 since there are so many duplexes so close by, which you can see on that map, and there are even more than it shows on that map. I was told by a member of the board that spoke with a member of the Planning Commission and also spoke with the city planning, and that they didn't foresee any issues getting these rezoned. So with that information, that's why he went ahead and purchased both of those lots. So I think it would be great to support a local builder who's been around for a long time and builds nice places to add 2 more duplexes where there are already duplexes right there. So that's all.
Thank you, Betsy. Anyone else?
Vice Mayor.
Yes, Brad?
So I didn't get bombed, but I got emails, text. Somebody likes to text me, and I text back, and we just disagree. And these are people I have a high amount of respect for. And the developer does excellent work. We're also provided with numerous examples on spot zoning. And at the end of the day, you just have to, sometimes I just have to look at things at a common sense. And I'm going to use my neighborhood as an example. I have a bunker house. I live in the historical district. And across the street from me is a low-income property that I promised my wife would improve in 20 years. I don't lie to my wife very often, but for some reason that property hasn't improved. We're still there. We have no plans to go anywhere. It's not the quality of the duplexes. The quality of the house behind the presently 2R2 lots is an outstanding home. I just envision myself driving out of my street on Audubon in the morning with 2 duplexes and passing to the street, going out to Mount Olive on your left where the duplexes are. And I drove down there, and it's what duplexes have a habit of becoming is the concern. And once again, it goes back to, how do we enforce code on duplexes and driveways, and so we can get in that battle all day long. But I just put myself, if I lived in that neighborhood, that's the development that I would like to see, the R2. I'd love for him to build a couple of great homes there, and I see both sides. I have to look at it. If I lived in that neighborhood, what would I want on those lots? And I'd like to keep them R2. And that's how I view this. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Anyone else?
Question.
Yes, Lisa?
Can you guys define spot zoning for me, please? Because I looked in the UDO, and I don't see the definition of it in there. And I'm curious of what...
Mr. Vice Mayor, yeah. Spot zoning, and I looked up on U.S. Legal, and I did confer with the city attorney ahead of time, but that he said this could be a valid definition, but because I anticipated this might come up in the conversation tonight. So, but spot zoning is a provision, a general zoning plan, which benefits single parcel or land created by an allowed use for a parcel that's not allowed in the surrounding properties. Or area because of implications of favoritism. Spot zoning is not a favored practice. It goes on to this. I'm skipping some of the definition because this gets kind of thick, but here it says where the exceptions applied to a single property is reasonably supported by the facts, often turns on public interest. The effects of spot zoning has on current uses in the neighborhood and properties, and any ramifications created by the zoning. So essentially, to put that in more layman terms, because that is a little bit complicated, a legal definition, but it's essentially like it sounds. You're putting a spot on the middle of a map, and there really wouldn't be any reason for that. Like, so if you just took a lot of in a neighborhood and said, well, we want to zone that one different than the rest of the neighborhood, that, in my opinion, would be a spot zoning, because you're just taking those lots, changing it for that one particular use, whereas the rest of the neighborhood is different. It is a matter of opinion, obviously. There is uses that are similar or actually identical duplexes that aren't far from this area. But how I see it is those were contained on their own cul-de-sac, on their own street. They weren't intermixed with the rest of the subdivision. And this one felt different, and it raised some concerns. And we just recommended to consider the ordinance, not to deny. So that's where we stand on it. So.
Okay. I guess some people think of spot zoning, I guess, is when you have a neighborhood and you're trying to make it a neighborhood that's included in itself. So you might put a small store in there, a country store, or whatever you call it. So that it's a commercial within I guess Chris knows what I'm talking about.
So yes, I think what you're talking about is an extreme version of spot zoning where you just have like a residential neighborhood that someone requests to put something that just clearly is is not appropriate and not in the neighborhood context. So you might have right in the middle of a larger subdivision, someone requests to have C1 use, for example, right in the middle of an R2 residential subdivision. That would be an extreme version of a spot zoning that would clearly fail. I think that with Ben's consideration of this, it's a little bit different because we're talking about spot zone with residential context. So we have R2, which is going to be primarily single-family residential neighborhoods, and then you have other zoning that is similar in nature that may have higher density. You typically see that type of zoning as transitioning from one neighborhood to another. If you have single-family residence, you would expect that a step up from that would be at the perimeter of that may be a duplex neighborhood or a triplex neighborhood, and then working up to a higher level of density. So I think from, if I'm correct, that Ben's perspective of this is not that it's not at that extreme case of spot zoning, but a slight example of spot zoning in general. I think that this, as Ben's pointed out, staff did do a recommendation to consider when this was sent to the Planning Commission. And this definitely has a lot of different angles that you can look at it. And I think if you ask 5 different professionals on this one, then you might get 5 totally different responses. So I just kind of wanted to clarify that we brought this forward with the professional opinion of Ben to the Planning Commission, and we gave the Planning Commission that report. So
Go ahead. We've just been using spot zoning a lot, and it's almost like, I guess I don't think of it as spot zoning when it's so close to another, well, an R4, which, I know it has R2, R4. It's just surrounded by, I guess I think of what you said was an extreme spot zoning.
Yes, and that's, these are conversations that we had as staff, and the original question was, that was brought to my office was, do we need to do a recommendation of approval or a recommendation of denial on this? And I looked at both sides of it. I could see where Ben's point is that this could be considered spot zoning, but I also see that it's potentially trending away. If you look to the east of this, you can see the green area. That's actually lighter density. If you look to the north of this, it's R2. Whenever you look at the R4, it's closer to that turn in the road. So I think that there are different opinions on this, and I think that where we landed as staff is the best option for us is to provide the staff report to the Planning Commission, provide them the context of the proposal, and let them make the determination with a recommendation to consider. They heard the same information and made that recommendation to deny.
So if you was to put duplexes in that area, what does that do to the property values around that area? Since it already is connected to an R4, does it affect the property value having an R3 mixed in that R2, R4 area?
But I think property values, whenever we are talking about those in context of what the development is, what it becomes over the years, it's hard to answer that question because it can change over time. So it may not have an immediate impact. It may have a positive impact on the neighboring properties. When you're going higher density and it's a well-done project, it can actually increase property values in the surrounding and adjacent properties. Over time, though, if there are if in areas of higher density, if it does become an area that is increases in crime rate, et cetera, then you can have decreases in property values. But to answer that on a fact base, and that's where we look at it, is what can we tell you that is a fact? All we can tell you is that that we don't know how that would specifically affect the immediate impact based off of the development, because at this point it is a rezoning, it's not a development, so we're not 100% sure what will be built there. I mean, we can go off of what they propose to us at this time, but just like the previous rezoning that we discussed, it could get built as anything that's allowed in that district. So.
Okay, that's fair. If you were putting a trailer park, obviously it's going to devalue the property around it. I didn't know if there was a significant difference when you put an R3 in the R4, R2 area. But that's what I was looking for. Oh, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, I just wanted to point out that on page 5 at the very top of the staff report, letter B, there's a box there that describes whether there's substantial property damage in the neighborhood as a result of the proposal. So I don't know if you want me to read all that, but I just wanted to bring that to your attention that that was in the staff report there if you wanted to look at it real quick. So.
Mr. Vice Mayor?
Oh, sorry. No, I was wondering if the owner was here, if the person that's,
Well, we will get to that when we're done with the board comments. My concerns on this property are that if the street that began Copperleaf, we were talking about the Crime development of duplexes, that is, as you can see, is all R4. If that was all R2, I would completely agree with the decision to deny this, but it's not. It's R4 as it is now. The request is not R4, it is R3. And it seems a little, I don't know, hard to fathom why we would want to deny something that is very close to the same zoning simply for the reasons that there were no homeowners at the public meeting for planning. There was no argument against it. The owner of the nice large single-family home to the east has said he has no problems with it, which to me goes a long, long way to saying, what is the problem then? I really doubt if anyone in the neighborhood has ever expected to not see another duplex. That has been the concern that we've been told, is that we don't want to agree to this because people driving to the R2 homes on the other 3 streets will have to see a duplex. They'll have to drive by a duplex. That has been the argument given to us to deny this. I just cannot imagine any homeowner in this entire neighborhood ever being upset to see 2 duplexes built very close to the opening of the street where the rest of the duplexes are. In addition to that, for there to be any argument about this when we have been pushed forward to approve the Winding Springs, which is hundreds of new homes of various zones of every kind, very different than the original proposal that they had in June of 2024 that came to staff and said, we want all R2. Suddenly, there's all these different colors on the Winding Springs with different places, different homes. And yeah, that's coming up, but that original proposal was all R2 and had green space, parks, everything. But our staff encouraged them to change it. It was in the workshop. So I don't understand how one change of one piece of property to R3 for 2 duplexes is really that big a deal. It seems like a really minor thing compared to what we're being encouraged to support on the Winding Springs addition. Who had said something over here? Betsy or who?
Mindy did.
Mindy, did you have?
I'll just go ahead and make the comment. There's nothing that says, well, first of all, I think there was mention of these R4s, they may be R4s, but they are all duplexes, right? That first street of R4 houses is all duplexes, so there's not, okay, so, okay. So there's nothing to say that the builder can't go ahead and build a couple of R2 homes on these lots, right? And rent them out, if he's wanting these as rental properties. He just wants to be able to do duplexes. But he could still do the single homes there as is. Okay, okay.
Yes.
My biggest concern, I guess, we did have, there was mention of no one expressing concerns, but I think there were a couple people here at the last meeting. There were a couple of residents
talking about
from
the
that
planning
neighborhood.
commission.
At the planning
At the
commission?
planning commission.
Okay, but there were a couple people from the neighborhood that came at the last meeting to express some concerns. But I guess I would wonder where does it stop? So if we allow this to be R3, well, what about someone coming in and buying the property to the east of it? Will they want R3? And then to the east of it, will they want R3? And then there are a lot more R3s right at the top of these R2 streets.
I don't think there's any other place that they could, looking at that map. I think that big home is the big, there's one tiny little narrow square.
There's not property just above the,
Well, yeah, but it doesn't look
Are
like,
the- are-
it looks like it's not developed or it
it's
doesn't have any
not, but
zoning, it doesn't look like.
it could be at some time, right? And in fact, that was one of the concerns I thought the planning commission had, was that at what point do you stop with the R3? Or is that property that's locked and will never be sold and is always what it is? Is that a potential that property could be sold?
Mr. Vice Mayor, our assessment is that anything on the north side of Copperleaf Drive could be developed. That's not prohibited by any reason. You don't have the zoning. You see on the map there where it turns green, that's agricultural zone, but that could be rezoned to anything all the way along Copperleaf until it dead ends.
And there wouldn't be any, at that point, if someone came in and said R3, then the argument would be, well, there's R3 right next to it, and so why wouldn't you do, so at what point does it stop?
Well, there's not R3 right next to it.
If we say, if we say that we can
No.
rezone from R2 to R3,
No, there's R3 on the left side, and there's no further way to put R3 to the west. You're talking about to the east.
I'm talking
There's
to
a
the east.
nice big family home. You're saying
That's to
there's
the
already
north.
R3. There's not R3 right
are
next.
you talking about the new home that was just built, the new that's to the north?
Pardon?
That's to the north of this property that we're talking about.
What is the square right there?
The green is all agricultural right now, right?
That's correct.
And so if someone came in and bought that and wanted to build duplexes there, the argument would be, well, why couldn't we build duplexes? Because you just zoned R3 to the
Staff
west
would
of
look,
this.
Mr. Vice Mayor, staff would look at that in the green area, which is A1. Staff would look at that and compare it to our comprehensive plan. We would look at our future land use map and determine if the proposal that they had is consistent with the future land use map. So I think that would be our primary determination on whether or not we would indicate support for, and we wouldn't recommend approval or denial at this point, but we would provide information based off of those findings. I believe
Mindy just made a point that there's R3 already there. If we approved it, it could just keep going R3. What is the zoning for the narrow strip just to the east of the proposed piece of property?
it appears to be R2.
There's not a zoning on it, but it is a single-family home, and I think Reed said it's a flagpole lot, so that is not going to be R3. It's already zoned R2. My argument on the R4 a moment ago for the first street was, we all heard a moment ago on the previous topic, R4, they can do anything they want. So who's to say somebody's not going to tear down these duplexes and put big apartment complexes? The fact that it was approved, R4, gave that opportunity to the developer. And, we sit back and we say, well, what if, what if, what if, what if? We could play what if games all day, all week long. the fact is, we know that the First Street is already zoned R4, and R3 is not as dense as R4. So it just doesn't make a lot of sense to prohibit somebody who is wanting to put 4 families onto 2 duplexes on that same area. It's not an apartment complex, it's not quadplexes, it's very limited. Is there anyone else, any board members, any
Mr.
comments?
Mayor?
Yes, Betsy?
I just wanted to reiterate a point you made. It would be different if that wasn't a whole street of duplexes. If everything was R2 in that area, then it would be spot zoning, residential spot zoning. It would be a completely different ballgame, but it's not. There are duplexes right there. We have, if you want to call it residential spot zoning, all over the city. And we're about, well, if it goes through, Winding Springs. That has a whole bunch of multifamily units that single family will have to drive by. I guess I don't understand why we allow it in some places for some people and then we don't for others. Yeah, when it's already right there, catty corner across the street.
Mr. Vice Mayor, I do want to point out that I don't know this particular builder, but I've heard good things about building, and his name is in our packet 2 or 3 times. And I don't think any issues have been brought up with any of the others. So I don't know that this is, at least from my perspective, I'm not trying to show partiality to one and not to the other. I have no issues with any of the other things that he's brought up. I have concerns about this one, so.
Vice Mayor?
Yes.
I have corresponded with this gentleman on email, never met him, love his product. I totally hear everybody. That's why we have 7 board members. We shouldn't understand each other. That's what makes a board. I was wondering if we could go to public comment.
Is there any other comments from the board? If not, I will ask for anyone from the public, from the audience, if you have a comment, to come to the board, to the podium and state your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Jim Caldwell, 609 South Oak Hill. This won't be an easy decision, but it will be at least simpler than the last one because we're requesting a zone from R2 to R3. All they can build on there is a duplex or a single-family house if they choose. Several things. These 2 lots are in different subdivision. This is Stewart Estates, which is across the street. Copperleaf is down below that. Different subdivision. Correct, you have to drive by it. In your packet, there was some mention of screening and fencing, and that because of the street, you can't put that in there. I would just note that at the north end of Audubon, those houses already have, for most of their side lots, already have the privacy fences in there so they can't see to the north as far as people living there. And these lots are large. They're more than twice as large as our code minimum for a duplex. 13,000 some square feet. They're also 25% wider than a minimum duplex lot. And I think we've already mentioned Winding Springs that are going to be probably less than the code minimum because they're in a PD. I get that. But again, I think the reasoning that at P&Z, the meeting there, was that in Winding Springs, we could back up, those duplexes backed up to another duplex development. They didn't face them, they were to the back. And again, based on our last conversation with the last project, that seems to be a big issue, R4 and R2, where in the PD of Winding Spring, they're actually driving by and they're next door duplexes and single families. So I think, again, it's a good accommodation. I will mention, too, that this area, Neighborhood 1, is 1,000 acres, and it's already been mentioned there's several hundred duplexes scattered into Neighborhood 1 in this yellow area. But all 3 of these projects are in Neighborhood 1 that we're rezoning. And so I'm not a prophet, but I would wager that anything in that green area that's going to go east will be a blended use. I can't imagine. I mean, I work for a number of those developers out in Endura Park and all those guys I've worked for, and they're blended use. We've got duplexes, houses, apartments. And the one that just went off, Country Club, is planned development, so it's full of apartments. That was in the yellow area. So again, there'll be many other duplexes, I think, down that road in the future. Maybe not immediate future. The other thing is, when you get old, you do remember things slower. And I said, I've worked on this property before. So 2007, this was platted. Copperleaf was platted, and they started building that out. About 6 years later, I worked on this same property as 1.2 acres, and it was going to be a pocket community. We were going to have 12 to 15 little houses packed up in there. And it didn't get very far, I don't think, in the process before the developer pulled out or whatever. But there didn't seem to be any concern at the time. It's right across from Audubon Street. We were going to have a pocket community. It sounded like a great idea. 12, 15 families sitting right there coming in and out of that. So way different construction. And at the time, it wasn't a big deal. Again, that was 10 years ago, and lots happened since then. So anyway, I appreciate your help. Scott would be here, but he's got 20 cows that are calving this week as we speak. And so anyway, between construction and he couldn't make it tonight. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Jim. I was just trying to make sure we stay on the right slide there for what we're reviewing. Anyone else in the public have any comment or questions? Anyone else on the board have any follow-up questions or comments? Well, I will entertain a motion to approve 2505, Ordinance 2505 on its second reading, amending Section 10221 of the City Municipal Code, rezoning from, 2505, rezoning from R2 to R3, 339, 349 East Copperleaf Drive.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Roll call.
Allen.
Yes.
Blair.
Yes.
Burns.
No.
Wild.
No.
Hunt.
No.
Rissler.
Yes.
Motion failed. And next agenda item is letter N, Ordinance 25-06. The second
Vice Mayor.
reading.
Do I still need to read?
It failed.
I failed, I'm sorry, I didn't
Yeah.
read.
Right, it failed. Did it not fail? It failed.
I was doing my count.
Yep. No, we move on. Ordinance, next agenda item 2506, the second reading, amending Section 10221 of the City Municipal Code, rezoning from R2 to R3 and R4, 1300 block of North Britt Street. Megan, you will be briefing the item.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. Megan Thomas, Planner 2. This is the second reading for a rezoning request located at the 1300 block of North Britt Street. As a reminder, the applicant is requesting to rezone the proposed Lot 6R and Lot 7 of the James West Kelchner subdivision from R2 residential medium to R3 2-family, residential 2-family, to allow for 2 duplex structures to be constructed, as well as to rezone the proposed Lot 5R from R2 residential medium to R4 residential multifamily to allow for the construction of a triplex dwelling unit. There have been no changes since the last reading, and staff is available for any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Is there any questions from the board on 2506? None. Is there any comments from the public on 2506, 1300 block of North Britt? If not, I will entertain a motion to approve the second reading of 25-06.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Carroll.
Yes.
Blair.
Yes.
Burns.
Yes.
Wiles.
Yes.
Hunt.
Yes.
Rissler. Yes. Allen.
Yes.
Ordinance number 25-06, ordinance amending section 102-21 of the Siloam Springs Municipal Code zoning map, rezoning from R2 to R3 and R4, property located at the 1300 block of North Britt Street.
I was supposed to say motion passed. I'm sorry, Alan. I was supposed to give you the high sign. Sorry. Next agenda item is letter O, the ordinance 25-07. It is the first reading of amending section 102-21 of the City Municipal Code, rezoning from R2 to PD, the 20,000 block of Bruce Rutherford Road. And another one for Ben.
Yes, last one for the night. Yes, thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor and members of the board, Ben Rhodes, Senior Planner. So as you recall, we looked at the annexation a little bit earlier this evening. This is now the follow-up on that. There's the same property. This is the Winding Springs PD, as you guys are all familiar with now at this point. This application was reviewed by the brand new Plan Development Review Committee, PDRC, with the recommendation to move the request to the Planning Commission. And the applicant requests to rezone its 51 acres from the R2 as through the annexation to PD plan development for a mix of different housing densities. The applicant is also seeking a future land use map amendment to address a attached single-family proposed land use. The request is to change the land use from the neighborhoods 1 to neighborhoods 2. The applicant is also seeking the annexation request, but I'll skip over that because you guys know about that. So here's some details on the project, just to give you guys the general summary. So there's 4 different types. There's land uses, they're all residential versus their traditional single-family detached. That's what you see in the brighter yellow color. I would note those do, but the existing single-family subdivision in the Grandview Estates. Then the second is a single-family on a narrow lot that has a rear-loaded garage. Those garages will be accessible through an alleyway that will be behind the residences. Then we have the third type is 2-family attached, which will be owner-occupied, but single-family with that shares a wall. And then your final is the green space parks and such. Those alleys are proposed for the rear accesses for most lots, except for the lots that will be fronting along some open space there. It will just be the rear area to get in to the properties with the open space out along the fronts of the houses, particularly right in that location where it's circled. The proposal does add a needed street connection, the tie Highway 412 to Bruce Rutherford Road. That would be connected through the north here, coming down the south, and then all the way back down. There is also a future option to connect tie to Highway 59. It wouldn't be called Highway 59, but it would be the logical continuation of that street where it tees in at Highway 412 currently. Parks will be included with walking paths and amenities for active recreation, such as sports courts of different kinds of sports. The annexation ordinance, I'll skip over that. Future land use map amendment, I mentioned that earlier. Staff did receive a call of a questioning nature that went after Planning Commission review. They just were wanting to know what was going on, and we informed them what the situation was of the project. For staff findings, Planning Commission recommends approval with the condition of annexation, which has been met at this point. And additional conditions can be added, and that will be covered later in the presentation, which were the conditions that came about from the workshop. So here's the future land use map. You see the neighborhood 1 there with the request to change to allow for the duplex and or townhomes, whichever you want to call those. And then Here was mentioned some of the earlier discussions of some of the earlier concepts. The applicant provided this as the standard R2 development, if you will, on the left-hand side. And then the right-hand side is after staff review and different amendments by the developer who've come up with the concept on the right side. Now, keep in mind, this is a proposed concept. It's not a preliminary plat at this stage. So, for instance, if there is a roundabout at the bottom, some of this street alignment may change on the final preliminary plat. So this is just the concept that you're looking at, and the zones, the land uses, not the actual development. That will come later through another permit. So here's this a sample of what this would look like, what this potential development could look like. This, I believe, would be Rutherford Road or future version of that, with street coming up in the noticing that there's no driveways coming off of these homes because there would be the rear alleyway behind. So it creates a different kind of street feel than you would in a traditional subdivision. Here are some of the samples of that were provided by the developer of what the potential houses would look like. And also some of the sports amenities and other things that they would provide in the development, what that could look like. With that, I would like to pass the floor over to Chris Paxton, Community Development Director, so he can cover some of the conditions from the workshop. Chris?
Mr. Vice Mayor, so I think I've had really good feedback from several of the board members and from staff about the workshop that occurred on February the 4th. We did have a chance to go through some of those comments that were discussed during the workshop, and there may be a couple on here that you may know that did not make this list of 6. For example, some of those notes that were taken on there would come during the preliminary plat process. For example, adding the future road that would connect to the north. You can see where there's a line with a big arrow that goes to it. And those are things that we can handle during the preliminary plat to address that there's going to be a future road connection to the north, which would just indicate approximate location of where those are. However, from the board conditions at the workshop, we were able to come up with the 6 condition possibilities, so which is the first of which is the alleyway that runs north and south. Located between the collector street and the local street shall include an east-west connection to the local and collector street south of East Peacock's Place. Number 2, the alleyway that runs north and south located between the collector street and the local street shall include an east-west connection to the local and collector street north of East Peacock Place. Number 3, there shall be no alleyway connection made to Bruce Rutherford Road. Number 4, lots 140 to 142 located on the west side of the collector street shall be used exclusively for the park. Number 5, the collector street shall be designed to be the northern terminus of a future roundabout for Bruce Rutherford Road, and engineering of the said roundabout shall be coordinated with the city of Siloam Springs. Number 6, street trees of a species variety with roots that do minimal damage to sidewalks and street curbs and street lighting shall be required within all of the street rights of way. Furthermore, no less than 1 tree shall be planted per structure per lot, and street trees shall not block street lighting. So the reason why you're seeing these a little bit differently than you're used to is since these are board conditions that came from potentially 1 or 2 of the board members, then it would require a board member to add this to the ordinance, and it would be ideal to do this on the first reading. If we did make additions or changes to a future reading, which you can do, it would, however, affect that future reading by taking it back to the first reading. So ideally, whenever you can see a sample motion that would allow you to either add all 6 of these or add 1 or 2 of these. I believe the applicant has been notified of all of these and did not have any additional feedback that I'm aware of on these 6 conditions of approval. That sample motion would be to place the ordinance on its first reading to suspend those rules and reading by title only. But you can see the difference on this is with the addition of the conditions as stated on page 2 of the staff report, but you can see the underscore area that would be where you would choose to place which of these conditions you would like to add to it, if not all. Staff will stand for any additional questions, and I believe the applicant's also present.
Vice Mayor, if I may. Chris?
Yes.
I have a question. Going back to what Director Burns had asked earlier, if they make that in 6, we make that a condition of approval, and to say these street trees pass, is this an opportunity, since it's a PD, that they would be replaced to make sure of growth? Since our new code has not been approved.
Oh, for the street trees are actually in the public right-of-way. Those do have, those are owned by the city. So after dedication of the right-of-way, those become city property. So those are a little bit different. And for example, annually, we have the tree giveaway. If we did have some street trees that the city owned that died, then we would have the ability to go to those locations and replace those. Unlike in the private sector where you have, we have the requirements for them to plant it, and then occasionally, those only have a 1 in 5% chance of survival. So we're aware of that, and the benefit of it being a street tree rather than a tree that's just in the front yard, which we consider landscaping, is that 20% chance of survival, it allows us to go directly to those locations and say, hey, the street tree needs to be replaced. We can just replace that tree if needed. However, yes, ideally we would need to see that those would be planted and to be successful to a certain point.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Alan. Any board members have anything? Any questions, comments? Buddy?
Vice Mayor.
Yes, sir.
I understand plan development is a significant change to what we traditionally see. And as I look back at the history of Siloam, I'm reminded of the Uri Hotel, which the picture hung in the firehouse. I think it still exists there. When it was 3 stories and what we used to have in the downtown area to meet some of our, housing for day workers. And so whether I like it or not, and I am not affected by this because I've chosen to live in an area of town that we just don't develop very fast in my part of the world. Having said that, there is a need for housing that is different. And what I liked most about this up to this point, the workshop allowed us input. One of mine was significant regarding drainage, and we started that conversation on a development that doesn't have the traditional retention ponds that we actually require, or the developer requires, that we are managing water in a natural way and actually make it part of the neighborhood. I think that's important to note on this one here. And also allowing sanitation to have input on services. We had a great conversation about street parking, some of the things we debate about how many houses or cars and who could be there. And so I like the 6 recommendations, and so that would be my suggestion, is that we require all 3 of those, or all 6 of those conditions.
Thank you, Brad. I've got a question. I don't know if Ben or Chris or whoever would know it. The original proposal of Winding Springs in June of '24 was all R2. How many lots were in that proposal? We had it, yeah, that picture on the left.
And I believe Ben has the exact number. I know that.
I would defer to the developer. I don't know.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Jesse Fulcher, 4058 North College, Fayetteville. It's been a while. I think it was 185-ish was my recollection, just slightly below 200.
85. Now it's 232. Okay.
Sir.
From the workshop slides, it seems that the original proposal was presented in June of 2024. And in fact, it states on the slide almost a critique that it was very cookie cutter development, similar to other subdivision designs with very little diversity in housing options. Similar smaller shaped lots, frontages would be to minimum standards with many driveways. Open space would be secondary to the primary drainage functions and would contribute little to the quality of life of the residents. And yet, you can see on this that the green space doesn't, well, you can't see it. Can you move back on the slide to show both overheads, the original and, yeah, we don't need all those. The one that had both overhead, right there. The green space doesn't really change a whole lot. So to tout the one on the right as all this additional quality of life doesn't make a lot of sense when the original development also had green space. But my biggest concern that was on the original slide of the workshop was the final comment. The director informed the applicant that this project proposal was not aligned with the vision that the board has expressed regarding quality of life, and that the annexation would likely not be approved if this was the project proposal. I have two questions. First of all, our board had not decided this vision that someone apparently thought they could push onto the developer, but who decided to sway the developer to change everything based upon saying that I don't think the board's going to approve this?
Mr. Vice Mayor, if you recall some of the conversations that the board was having at around that time frame, a lot of them had to do with the type of development that was proposed as the original concept you see on the screen. That was based off of conversations that were happening with the board at that time, based off of lot sizes and typical. A lot of the comments that were made were directly from the board meetings.
What I recall, the board meeting on the plan development, that the discussion was a group decision to hold off on more plan development until enough investigation was done as to what plan development truly meant. And that's why the committee was set up as an offshoot of the Planning Commission. But it seems like we haven't slowed down on plan development. We have rushed right into bigger and more. And my only concern is when a developer wishes to come in and do a certain development, to be told that, well, you're not going to get the annexation through our board if you don't change it to what we want the number of different houses types to be. If the developer only wants R2, then he should be able to put R2. So it just seems like we're engineering different types of housing just for the sake of some people want that, and the heck with it. We're just going to do it.
Vice Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I'm hearing, not from you, sir, when Chris and I were reviewing this, I think those numbers are reversed. The old project was, I think, 225 homes. The new one is 185-ish.
No, the original, or the new one shows 232 in our board packet. I don't know on that one, that's why I was asking. But the one with the pink shows 232 lots. That's why us and the developer said 185-ish. But see, for our slides in the workshop to say,
Is that it?
oh, we're going to get all this quality of life with all this green space, it was already there.
Mr. Vice Mayor,
Yes.
the quality of life components for the original concept would likely have resulted in privacy fences in an area that's not really a part of the subdivision, because those are not required to. For example, the walk paths, the uses, for example, the sports court that is in there, and I say that in generic terms because it can deviate to what type of courts it is. This has changed to a usable space that's an asset to the community with the PD versus with the typical R2 zoning. You build the privacy fence into the backyard and it gets used as just a drainage ditch. We can't require additional pedestrian amenities through that area. That would be green space on the original concept, and some of the other quality of life components, for example, the street trees and street amenities, would divert back to our typical or standard street section. The other area that was looked at was on the further east side. On the original concept, you see the hammerhead, and you can see the drainage path where there's green space that kind of trickles through the lots. What you see in that type of development often is fence lines go up to block that out of view, and it starts becoming a maintenance issue. When you have amenities that are constructed as amenities, for example, walking trails, different parks type features, then it puts more eyes on that area and it becomes an asset to the community, and the community through their POA is more likely to provide those maintenance needs. And also through the east side, on the proposed concept, it changes that green space to more of a buffer between future development to the east. So there are some changes to it that support the quality of life component. But I think just from an overview, from just looking at it based off of the image showing the amount of open space versus what that open space is being used for is the big difference.
And I argue that you could have easily worked with the developer as his original proposal to make those changes. As it is now, you talk about quality of life and walking spaces. Yeah, we have a nice narrow alley all down between these townhomes to allow, trash pickup? I'm telling you, I've seen it. That alley will become a dumpster zone for people throwing their trash. It will become a nightmare. And you will have people racing up and down it on skateboards and bicycles and throwing over trash cans and stuff. I don't think the alley was a very smart idea. My argument is that we already have a problem with local developers not even wishing to build anymore, because we have crossed quite some time ago the 50% threshold to become a low-income housing community. And instead of allowing someone to build a large development of single-family homes on R2, we instead say, well, you're not going to get that approved by the board of directors. I think you need to go and change it and add in townhomes and duplexes and all these other variety. You can see them on the new development. There's not much R2 single-family homes on there. It's frustrating, because this is what we have got to say as a city, not just as a board, but as a city. do we wish to continue on this long road that got started in the last 10 to 15 years of developing more and more and more apartment buildings, quadplexes, very small homes, and becoming a low-income housing community? I would think there would be some encouragement for the bigger lots, but it doesn't seem to be that way.
Mr. Mayor?
Any other? Yeah,
Yeah.
Betsy.
I was quite surprised too at the workshop to see that we went from R2 to planned development, because we did have a lot of conversations last year about planned development and slowing it down. And I was told, well, we need to figure out how to stop developers from using planned development because they find loopholes so they can cram as many units on to the land as possible. And we need to stop that. We need to slow it down. And so I was really surprised. But I'm like, wait, they had a whole neighborhood of R2 when R2 and R1 is what we've talked about we need more of, because we have become a low-income city. Yeah, and we need balance. We are out of balance. And we had these discussions last summer, and then this comes out at the workshop. I was quite surprised. This isn't slowing it down, slowing PD down, which we've been doing more and more of. It's speeding up. We've got another PD coming up next, I think. Yeah, for all the reasons we've talked about, I am not supporting any more planned development until we get things under control. And think about what do we want the future of our city to look like? Do we want to be 70% low income? Because we're headed that way. I don't know. It just seems like build, build, build instead of what vision do we have? What do we want? I was told by a very well-known businessman this week that people in the nice homes are leaving because of what Siloam's turning into. And that's on us. Yeah, I'm disappointed. So I know for what that's worth, I'm just one person, but yeah, I'd rather see R2 and R1 and estate homes and have balance again.
Mr. Vice Mayor.
Yes.
So I wanted to address the slow down comments. What we were talking about whenever we brought this forward was the slowing down the process. So we did slow down the process. We now went from the developer bringing a PD that goes straight to the Planning Commission and straight to the board to now it now has additional stops at a PDRC subcommittee of the Planning Commission that has to forward that to the board. We had added an additional workshop to allow each of the board members to have one-on-one access and conversation with the actual developer. So I just wanted to reiterate, we have slowed down the process. However, if it's a proposed plan development, the other option, there's not really a lot other that we can do for their submittal process. I mean, we didn't add any dates to the submittal. We just added a couple extra meetings in between the typical times. So we wanted to try to balance and respect the developer's time for their original timeline, but we also so we're not slowing down the process as far as costing them extra time, but we also wanted to slow down and make sure that we get additional input from the Planning Commission and additional input from each of the board members. And when we look at the original concept on the left and the proposed concept, it's hard to tell from this map the significance of the difference. However, when you break it down and start looking into the conditions of approval, and you start looking at the difference between the quality of the development from our basic zoning standards, which we can't add additional requirements to. I heard a comment that we could do that with the R2 development. The R2 development has established development standards.
And we can change those.
You cannot change them after the original submittal has been put in place. That is not within the context of the law.
This also to slow the process down. Before we got into this process, I tried to set up a field trip for the board to take you to a similar development like this, and I couldn't get the board to go. To go to look at it, to see what we do with the development. So then I wanted to make sure we're slowing this process down to actually have a workshop and sit down with the board and make sure, hey, if you want to make any changes, anything to this, so that's where we are. Now, again, this is the pleasure of the board.
Mr. Mayor. Oh.
I thought,
Who asked? Lisa?
I asked before Alan, but Alan was already speaking, so. I just want to say, I'm going to make a couple of comments. I feel deceived after that comment. I feel like it was not to slow down the process, and if that's what the idea was, I feel deceived, and I hate that, because I do my homework, I do my studying, and I look at everything that I can. I feel deceived by that comment. But my question initially, before you made your comment, was I was under the impression that the homes that were coming into this new plan were higher cost homes than the R2 that were originally developed.
I think, Chris, right next door to this development, are those R2s or R1s?
On the northwest corner, you can see the brown area on the proposed concept. To the west of those, there's duplexes. That's why we had looked at transitioning into this development from duplex to try to get into a lower density area. Those are transitional. That's a transitional area. The west of or the southwest quadrant of this image, I believe, is single family. Which is Grandview Estates. I believe just to the north of Grandview Estates was the duplex subdivision.
So it was my understanding.
Not within this, you're talking about outside the housing addition, yeah.
And those are the type of developments I thought the board was trying to get away from, even though those are R2, because you don't have the landscaping, you don't have the trees, they're cookie cutter.
So the property value, my question still I don't think has been clearly answered. The property value in the proposed plan compared to the original proposed is a lot higher than the proposed value on the R2. Is the property value, each property, going to be sold higher than it would have if it was originally done with the original plan?
Staff doesn't speak to property values, so I would deflect that to the applicant.
I was looking at him.
Director. I could answer that a few ways. We're gonna be developing the land and selling the lots to a home builder or home builders, and so they have an opportunity to build products that would be allowed, whether it be a PD or R2 or R1, right? They're not held to a certain size. They don't have to go build a 5,000 square foot estate home on any lot. They could do a 1,500 square foot home. So the values are going to be what the values based on what the builder builds. I think to what staff's point is on the right side, which is the concept that we've come before you with, is you're going to have more amenities. So that would seem to drive more value to the homes because there's more amenities available to the neighborhood. There's landscaping required. There's landscaping required along the streets. There's landscaping required along the green spaces, and there's landscaping required at the entrances. That's part of the PUD booklet and part of your conditions of approval. So you'd assume additional landscaping would drive additional value in the homes. And the third thing is, in the PD, we committed to using masonry on the first floor of every residence. So again, you're going to drive value through material choices, and that's going to increase the value of the homes. That's going to be above and beyond anything that you can require in R2, because in R2 you cannot require the amenities in the park, you cannot require the landscaping, you cannot require the masonry. And that's kind of the give and the take of the PD, and that's why a lot of communities do use it, because to your points tonight, during a couple other conversations was, well, what are you going to build? And so with the PD, you do get the opportunity to see what's going to be built. The difference between an R2 in a PD. It may not be substantial in just looking at them, because honestly, with a project or with a property of this shape, there's really only so many ways to lay it out. If you have to connect to 412 and you have to connect to Bruce Rutherford, there's only so many ways to do that. But what you can't see quite as well is all the landscaping that's going to be required that's not required on the left, the amenities that are required on the right, not required on the left, and then the finishing materials of every home in the subdivision that are going to be required on the right and will not be required on the left. I think that's what drives the value to your question, Director, on the right side. And it's just not easy to see that when you're just looking at the two site plans side by side.
You can't see it in this, but I was under the impression that we were told that it will be higher property values at some point.
Yeah, getting into property values, and that's been mentioned a few times tonight, that's so difficult. And honestly, it's property value today versus property value 10 years from now, when you have, good neighbors versus bad neighbors. You have the neighbor that doesn't take care of their yard or constantly has a problem with a vehicle in their driveway. Those things affect property values, but they're not anything that any of us can really speak to
I
definitely
think it's the
tonight.
quality of homes that have been built in the R2 areas of our community have been very poorly built.
The ones on the right side are going to be 100% masonry first floor, and that's going to be required by the PD. And on the left side, it can't be required. So the right side will be higher value. Your right side.
And
as
I think
well.
that's the point I was trying to make.
Yeah.
Is we're trying to get away from the R2 low-quality homes that we put people in them. The inspections haven't been to top quality that they should be, and these people can't afford to redo what's already been built for them. If you have a home with no frame under the window, they can't afford that.
Yeah.
And so we want higher quality homes for our citizens. I don't want to, on my conscience, that I put somebody in a low-income home that can't really afford to fix the mistakes that should have never been made.
Yeah, no, there shouldn't be builders building homes that aren't passing everyday inspections.
We
for
have those
frame.
all over our community, and I
Gotcha,
think that's what
gotcha.
we're tired of.
I would be tired of that as well. That makes sense. Yes.
That's what we're saying here. He just spoke, this will be a higher quality home because of this restriction the PD allows the board members. Because I know the conversations that I've had the past 6 or 8 months, and when we saying PD, this is the first PD I think I've seen in 6 months.
I'm not going to say we didn't slow them down. What I'm saying is I thought the purpose was to slow, having less of them come through. I know for a fact that was told to me.
So I agree, I'm not arguing. So when I hear the developer talking, the one on the left is the original concept. We can't make the requirements, so it's going to be a lesser home. The one on the right, we're making higher requirements. It's going to be a better home. That's why I supported this, and this is why we're at, correct?
That's why I was asking the question, and I appreciate that.
Yes, ma'am.
But I do want to be careful what we say about things, because the community, they are watching, and we are held accountable for anything that happens in here.
That's a
And
good question. That's why we're getting that clear, and I appreciate the developer saying that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. I will state that we have heard from Chris Paxton that there were more steps involved to set up what sounded like his interpretation we wanted to be slowing the process down. I understood from the board meetings that we held on PD that it was not a matter of putting more steps to slow it down, it's a matter of let's take a step and wait and investigate what PD means. And I even heard several board members say, we better not have any more planned development at all. But that hasn't stopped. Yeah, you may have more steps, but that hasn't stopped at all. There's not been any slowing down. There may be more steps, but it hasn't slowed it down of moving forward. And I say that because it says it right here in the slide that we were given. The director informed the applicant, whoever director is, if it's Chris or whoever, informed the builder, the applicant, that this project proposal was not aligned with the vision that the board has expressed regarding quality of life. and that the annexation would likely not be approved if this was the project proposal. I don't believe anybody has the right to give voice to this board saying we will or will not do something. I don't even know what this vision from the board expressing quality of life is. We said we were going to discover, investigate the PD, and I have learned the hard way, though. You know, you may call it petty, but I'm not going to support something here when we are so blinded or wearing blinders or whatever that we can't approve a four-family R2 to R3. One housing block that doesn't come even close to the impact of our community that this will have. This is going to impact a lot, some positively, some negatively. But I've learned the hard way that many times, no matter what we say here or what this board wants, it doesn't usually matter. Anybody else have anything on the board?
Vice Mayor.
Mr.
Who? Reed?
I'm excited about it. What I see there, yes, we have a good variety, but I think something that's lacking in our nation is the ability to, what I say, live outside. You're going to have a home, a residence, but you're also going to have the opportunity to take that walk to go and be a part of community, and that's going to get you some interaction with others around you. And to me, that's a tremendous positive. I like the direction of it. It has variety to it. One thing we don't have in this community, and I'm not saying we need to jump on board with bunches of it, but some people want to have a house but not have a lot of yard. That may not be me, may not be you, but we don't have that available to them. We're gaining some on that a little bit. So, and that's not the only reason, but I like how it's been put together and pieced. I do like the 6 stipulations or whatever those were called to be put in with that, and I think the ability to go with the roundabout down below to work with the surrounding area, I think it's good. I do think it's something that needs to be looked at, not just today, but in 10 years and what have you. But for today, I like this. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Betsy.
I just wanted to back up what Lisa said. The board never talked about slowing down the process. We talked about slowing down PD. And the next item up is one where I was told we don't have enough industrial. We don't want to change it to PD, but then when it came before the board, it was recommended to be PD. So but to go back to support Lisa, she's right. It was to slow down PD happening at all, not the process.
Anyone else? Is there anyone in the public that wishes to speak on this subject? If not, I will entertain a motion to put Ordinance 2507 on its first reading, suspending the rules and reading title only.
So moved.
Mr. Vice Mayor,
Moved and seconded. What?
the conditions would need to be a part of the original motion if those are going to carry with the motion.
Whatever we have before us, I assume, is part of the ordinance.
I'm making a motion with the 6 conditions.
Is there separate conditions that are not part of it?
The 6 conditions are not a part of the motion that's on the table. They would have to be added. There's a sample motion in one of the slides.
So your motion is to accept ordinance 2507 with the 6 conditions. Is that acceptable to the person who seconded? Who was it that seconded? Brad?
Oh, I
is that-
thought Brad
I am
agreed.
acceptable with that, yes.
All right. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? This is to approve ordinance 2507 on its first reading with the 6 conditions. Roll call.
Blair.
No.
Burns.
Yes.
Wiles.
Yes.
Hunt. Rissler.
Yes.
Allen.
No.
Carroll.
Yes.
Motion passed, sorry.
Ordinance number 25-07, ordinance amending section 102-21 of the Siloam Springs Municipal Code, city zoning map, rezoning from R2 to PD, property located at the 200,000 block of Bruce Rutherford Road, and amending the future land use map of Siloam Springs 2040 comprehensive plan.
Thank you. Next agenda items, letter P, ordinance 25-08. First reading, vacation of utility easements at the 2200 block of Highway 16. Megan, do you wish to brief it?
Thank you. Megan Thomas, Planner 2. This is the first reading for a request to vacate utility easements located at the 2200 block of Highway 16. This request is associated with the Siloam Community Garden Significant Development, which was approved at the February 4th Board of Directors meeting. The applicant is requesting to vacate 2 20-foot wide utility easements located to the south of Lot 1 and north of Lot 2 of the Soft 16 addition. On the screen is the easement closure exhibit. The easements to be vacated are shown in the dark gray area, so that's this right here and this. Those are the 2 20-foot easements to be vacated. The easements are not needed by the city or private utility operators and are requested to be permanently closed. All relevant utilities and departments have signed off on this request. New easements are proposed to be dedicated along the newly described property boundaries as shown on this exhibit there. Staff finds that the vacation request as presented appears to meet all local and state requirements as set forth, and staff is available for any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Megan, any questions or comments by the board? Anyone? Any questions or comments from the public? Roll call.
Make a motion to.
I have to have a motion to approve the first reading, 2508.
So moved.
So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Moved and seconded. Roll call.
Burns.
Yes.
Wiles.
Yes.
Hunt.
Yes.
Rissler.
Yes.
Allen.
Yes.
Carroll.
Yes.
Blair.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Ordinance number 25-08, ordinance of vacating and abandoning utility easements at the 2200 block of Highway 16.
Thank you, Alan. And now we will go to your administrator report.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Expenditures report, first one's for $104,702, and AECI for manual pad mount with switchgear for electric department. The second one is $51,194 for AECI 2 PSE 11 manual pad mount switchgear electric department. And the third is also $53,508 for AECI 2 PSE 10 manual pad mount switchgear electric department. Just want to remind everybody, join us Thursday for public input session, proposed a Unified Development Code draft. The session will begin at the library from 4 to 6. That's this Thursday, and that is rescheduled from the weather delay from last week. The Utility Commission will also be have its regular scheduled meeting. Will take place this Thursday at 5:30 p.m. at City Hall. It will be streamed live. That is something we just started. It'll be this meeting to make sure that other people, if they can't make it, they can watch it live on YouTube and broadcast on Cox Channel 245. Just a little good news today. And a big thank you for the balers from the board. It's starting to pay off. Our sanitation department received great news today. They will now earn $20 per ton over a premium for cardboard recycling, thanks to the cleanliness of the material that we're providing, thanks to our balers. We will be having our first coffee and conversation March 12th at 9 a.m. This event will be hopefully quarterly, where you can come by and talk to staff and department heads and board members We would also like, as we do this quarterly, to give different times out there, to give different schedules, so we may have it next time in the afternoons, but we can look at it as we go forward, and I'll also give, due to our scheduling, I'll give you several different dates that you can pick from in the future. And if you will notice, the last thing I have to report in the boardroom, if you've noticed, our TVs are in a lot better shape. They have been replaced. They're a couple inches bigger and a lot clearer. Great job by our staff, because that was not easy to hang that fan. That was some amazing work, the work they had to do up in the ceiling. And if you all know, and trust me, if we turn that thing on, we're going to stay really cool, because we're going to have to be careful how it gets up to blow the papers off your desk. And then behind you, if everyone notices, around 5 o'clock, around that 6, 7 o'clock, that sun comes through there and blinds everyone. Well, we had staff also put, you really can't tell it right now, but you'll be able to see it. It's really cutting that down, so hopefully you'll like that when you can see it in the light. But those are the boardroom updates we just completed, so thank you, staff, for doing that. That's my report.
So it was almost like a tent job or something?
Yes, sir. I'm trying to remember the name of it. It's a tent, but it's almost like church-like, the pattern in it. It's really like stained glass almost, but it is. It's a template. So the girls said it looked good, so we went with it.
Thank you, Alan.
But if you don't like it, that's something that can be peeled off and removed.
Well, I just didn't think the big giant fan was moving fast enough tonight. But, yeah, I was warned ahead of time that it would blow our papers away. And, yep.
Be careful if you wear a skirt.
Yep.
He does that.
So David, don't wear your skirts to the board.
Yeah, I'm not going to wear my Scottish kilt next time.
It may lift up.
We'll next go to director comments. Reed, we'll start with you and end with Lisa.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair, or Vice Mayor, sorry. It's incredible to see some 70-degree weather. I'll say it, hallelujah. Glad for it, very thankful for the snow and the water retention they could bring to my yard, but I'm very glad for the sunshine. I know on Thursday night we've got a meeting that'd be good for everyone to attend with the Unified Development Code. You know, we've had a lot of transition with from federal, state, and even local level people coming in and out, and even with everything that's happening, we have much to be thankful for. And in the city of Siloam Springs, we still have many reasons to get up and be thankful each morning. And I don't want to get rid of that. I want to keep that and remember it. And if you have an opportunity, maybe you can as well. But that's all I have.
Thank you, Reed. Brad?
One of the benefits of living next to the city compound during foul weather is, they work all night. And so we thank them for that. And second would be, I'd like to thank Wastewater. That was a great walkthrough and letting us know that we have significant challenges, like many things ahead of us, that we're going to have serious discussion on going into the next budget cycle. I'd like to mention the American Legion has their 106th birthday, March 15th, 8 to 10, obviously at the hall, or we call it the community building. It's free for post members, families, and all veterans. All others at $7 donation. So I'd encourage you, it's March 15th. I know it's in advance, but I'll let you plan on that. They're a great group of guys. And then second, thirdly, as I'm thinking of all these challenges that we have ahead of us, I got a reminder today, so I'll share that reminder, is that to slow some of the process that we're worried about would be a good idea to adopt some ordinances that other cities have. Years ago, I went to a life safety initiative program in Florida, And one of those were sprinkler systems and residentials, which I despise because, you know, it's costly. Having said that, we can do an ordinance require residential sprinklers in multifamily homes, duplexes, and townhouses. And I'm not talking what the gentleman mentioned, we're talking true sprinkler systems. That would also be a way to improve quality over quantity. That is all, thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Mindy?
Okay, I also want to thank Tony and you guys for the tour today and for making us aware of the needs that we have there. And just thank you for that job you do. It's a big job. Thank you also to the veterans for coming again tonight and just, like I said last week, sharing their perspective on Independence Day. And then one more thing, I need to clarify something that I should have said earlier when we were talking about setting the hearing date for the easement vacation at 201 North College Street. Because it is in my ward, the owners of the building there did come to me last fall, and I'm not gonna be able to remember all the conversation because it was last fall, and I've slept since then. I believe they were initially told, hey, sorry, you've built your deck on an easement and you're gonna have to take it down. And then they came to me as their ward representative and said, hey, is there anything we can do? And they admitted that they thought that since the steps went all the way out, they could take their deck all the way out. They made some assumptions that were just incorrect assumptions, and they admitted that, but they just wondered, is there anything we can do other than tear out this, $1,000 deck that they built? And so I was the one that really encouraged the staff to look into it, like I would do with any citizen who has issues that we might be able to help them with. And so I encouraged a meeting with staff, and I've talked to the staff about the issues some. The owners of the building have talked to the staff. I do agree with what David said earlier. It's really nice that there is something there. And there have been just some legitimate concerns that have been brought up about that street, not the least of which is that some of the business owners up and down the street noticed people going the wrong way on that street all the time, which was one of the things that I almost did when I went to the street myself. I started to take a right there, right off, right, let's see, I would have been taking a right toward University. I can't take a right toward University. That street goes one way the other way, but they see people doing. So there are some issues that we may want to look up. Yes, it started with a mistake. I was the one that pushed the staff and the citizens to work together, and hopefully we can come up with a solution that will be good for all concerned. So.
I don't think there was a department that was not working on something over the past few days with the snow and the cold and the ice and all that. And I just want to say thank you. Some we see out and about a lot, some we don't, but I know for a fact that all throughout the city, regardless of what department you work in, that there were people working. And I just want to say how much we appreciate your efforts. They may seem like they go unnoticed, but they do not, and we appreciate it greatly.
Can I say something real quickly in that regard? I really appreciate the citizens who speak out on Facebook, just thanking our staff for what they do when they go above and beyond. So I just wanted to.
I wanted to thank staff for clearing the roads when it's 0 degrees. That was awesome, and I know a lot of work, and they did a great job. And also the group, I think they're calling themselves like Siloam Emergency Services, who set up the tent and did all that for the homeless, which leads me to the next thing. I've had some citizens come to me about a few things, and one of them, I know Chief Kendall talked about all the reasons not to use the community building. And I was asked by some people like, well, it doesn't have a sprinkler system. It doesn't have a hood in the kitchen. I don't remember everything. But we rent it out now. So why is it allowed to be used if it doesn't have
It's the overnight
all
stay.
those things. So then the next question is how much money would it take to bring it up to standard? What would it cost? People want to know. I've been asked by several people, what would it cost? Is it something the city can budget for? Is it something we can take donations for?
Sorry,
Oh.
just yawned.
So, yeah, I know you had a long list and I didn't go write them down. But, I mean, none of them sounded like hideously horrible millions or anything like that. And it's something that people keep asking me about. So, and it would certainly make it easier, than what they're doing now. So I would love to get an estimate on that and be able to share it with others. Brad made a comment earlier and kind of opened up the door because I've had a couple citizens ask me to say something about this. And I know Brian with code enforcement retired recently, and so I'm sure that plays a factor in things. But I have had some complaints just in general, like junk and broken down cars and things like that, that aren't being taken care of. And one of the places that was mentioned was Hayden Place. So I don't know if code enforcement's understaffed, because I know it's a big job. So I said I would mention that. And the last thing, which I know everybody's gonna love, I've been asked, and I ask y'all some, about Lake Francis. It's still not finished. Are they still being fined?
No, we paused the fines once it was paved since it was substantially complete.
Okay. So, because that was one of the complaints, the roughness of the road, the manholes aren't flush. There's still at least one stop sign missing. Are those things that they're going to take care of?
All those things are on the punch list, yes.
Okay. And the fence along Lake Francis for property just west of the railroad tracks on the north side is still missing. Is that?
Correct. That's something that we're having replaced outside of the contract.
Okay, so the city's.
We've already signed the purchase request. It's just a scheduling issue with the fence company.
Okay, so the city's going to take care of the fence.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, I think that's it. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Tony, for the field trip today. Thank you, Alan, for putting that together. We received a lot of information, and I hope we can get some funding from the state, and I hope that we can, help the citizens understand the need. I got a lot of compliments lately, which is contradictory of what we've been getting on Brightspeed. So I wanted to share those because I don't always want to be the negative. I want to say the positive too.
Are they operating?
Mm-hmm. They're back operating. They've been putting the door hangers on the doors. The only thing that one person said that, and it wasn't a bad thing, is you might want to have English and Spanish because their neighbors do not speak English. So it would help, but at least there's a notification on the door, and they appreciated that. The people that are working on them are communicating. They're going up to the door and letting people know. One lady had I've gotten lots of compliments recently, I guess because we've spoke up about the Brightspeed before, that they're knocking on the door and saying, hey, there's a hole in your backyard. If you have any animals, wait and don't let them back there, and then they would fence it off and whatever. But I did get one question, and this is probably for Jay. If someone received the door hanger and don't want them on their property, can they say no, especially if they're not staying in the right-of-way?
They have the right to be in the right-of-way. And if someone thinks they're not in the right-of-way, that's a different issue. I don't know who's out there measuring the rights of way, but typically they do want to stay in the right of way because they have the right to go in there and work on the lines and replace lines in the right of way, so.
Because I know they haven't stayed in the right of way. They came on our property in a whole area that we don't even have any right of ways. I mean, it was way out of, so I didn't know. They can tell them no to get back in the right of way. Now, how do they find that out? Do they contact the city? What do they do?
If there is an issue, they can reach out to, and I appreciate your comments because we have worked really, really hard over the last 2 to 3 months to be very sure of what I expect as a city administrator and what I expect for our citizens. Their fines have been paid. There's other things that we're working on. As far as I know, they have been, and I think they're just getting back to work because we just finally be able to make sure everything's been paid and this is where we're at. And I've been very happy with the communications. Kevin's done an outstanding job making sure that he's communicating, and from where I'm seeing it, we're heads and we're head and shoulders above from where we were.
Right.
But if there is concerns, we still need to know where
Well, I know that they are working in one neighborhood and they broke another gas line. Shocker. Are they supposed to call the city on that? I know the fire department just.
the
I
gas
had to call the
line.
fire department on it, and the people had to be removed from their homes. One had to be placed in a hotel.
We have a gas line issue sometime that goes to dispatch and the fire department is notified, but that would be something with Black Hills Energy.
But
again,
they don't have to contact the city on those.
I would like it, just that case of emergency, it could possibly an issue. I would like our staff to know, so I'll check into that.
Okay, yeah, the fire department was there, and people were displaced out of their homes into hotels, but they did pay for the hotel.
I mean, you found one of my gas leaks that we didn't know about.
Well, yeah, if I went to smelt that, and nobody, and how many cars did they put? They brought tons of cars.
Yes, that's good for me to know, so I'll make sure, Kevin, if we would, just make a note to reach out to Brightspeed. If gas lines, just let us know. Or we can let the
that was
public know in case there's an issue.
One question they had. And the next thing I have is, I got an email, and I've had phone calls on this ever since it's been brought up, and I think Director Hunt brought it up, and I think Director Berlaire. I got an email today, or was it yesterday? I don't know. Today or yesterday, regarding when are we going to start working on changes to the sidewalk ordinance. This person says that the change I'm referring to is the sidewalk construction requirement waiver on cul-de-sacs in the legacy historic neighborhoods. Over the year, our company, DB Construction, has built and developed many single-family homes and multifamily buildings in the historic district. Because of the current code, we've been forced by the city development department to build sidewalks in front of these homes or townhomes when 99.9% of the time it makes no rational sense to do so.
I think you should see that change coming on this next board meeting or the one after, Kevin. I can't remember.
Yes, so that was, I believe, discussed at the second meeting in January. Staff drafted that, and Williams Law reviewed that same week.
Okay.
And just the time that it takes to publish, and it goes to Planning Commission because of the chapter that it's in, any changes required, Planning Commission. And so it will be heard by the Planning Commission this second meeting in March, second Tuesday of March, and then go to the board on April, the first meeting in April for its first reading. And that's a change to the master street plan and to the subdivision regulations in Chapter 86.
Oh, okay. Well, I just got the email today. So I wanted to follow up for the citizens. Okay. So I want those the two things. But thank you for, it makes me feel good about the Brightspeed, that we're getting good compliments about it. And I shared enough of the negative. I want to make sure I share the positive. And so thank you for all that.
David, can I say one more thing? I'm so sorry. But I forgot to thank the sanitation department and Alan for working this out to have extra bags picked up for the next couple of weeks because of the unable to pick it up last week. And that came about because a citizen actually said, hey, would it be possible to not have to pay for extra bags? And that was mentioned to Alan, and Alan made it work out, and anyway.
And thank you for that. A shout out to Barbara. She's going to kill me for that. But even though when the city's closed, a lot of people know, and thank you, board, for your support during that, because those decisions are hard. But just keep in mind that when we are closed due to weather, probably 70, 80% of us are still working, and that's including Barbara, because when we were getting, people were calling every day in garbage, we're talking probably 60 to 100 calls a day, and Barbara was taking those at home, just trying to assure people we'll get on it. So, thank you for that.
David, since Mindy got to ask 2 questions. I realized I'm going to get asked this. How long do they have for the punch list at Lake Francis?
Depends on the severity of the items. So they've wrapped up most of the smaller stuff already, like the remaining signs and some of the things that you had commented on. There is the 2 areas where the road kind of dips, where that grade is improper. And depending on what's actually causing that issue, if it's a pavement issue, or if it's a curb elevation issue, then that'll dictate just the amount of time that it takes to fix that. So, but they would like to be done, as soon as possible, but they've wrapped up most of those smaller items already.
I assume they haven't been paid the rest yet.
Correct. I believe our retainage is around 110,000, and they won't get that until they've satisfied the city.
So hopefully that should motivate them that we're not talking 6 months down the road, or hopefully in the next month or 2.
We want this done as quickly as possible, Director.
No, I know. It's just, I have to go back and share what I learned. And then one other thing I forgot was to thank Arthur for all his hard work. I know he does a lot to try to bring new businesses and industries and jobs here, which we really desperately need. So thank you, and thank you for the update.
All done?
Until I come up with something else.
Ian, Reed, Brad, you guys want to jump in here since the lady's dead? Nothing else?
Can we
No?
put our breakfast order in?
Can you what?
Put our breakfast order in?
It's about that time, isn't it? Yeah, I was about to ask for another recess. I'll tell you that.
Well, that's up to you.
No, I'm done here. I want to say, yes, thank you to our Chamber of Commerce and Arthur Holbert for hustling and bustling to get new industry and business to move here. And I've not seen that done like he has done in all the 40 years I've been paying attention. So I'm really appreciative, because that's more business for Siloam, more industry, more jobs, more taxes, and we need it. I want to give my thanks to all the staff. We had a lot of good proposals tonight, whether it was the fireworks, the public use and sale, or the contract through Travis. We had a lot of good discussion on parks. I think Chris at the last board meeting said we got some new park benches or something, I think. And so I just like hearing stuff like that, and so I appreciate it. I'm sorry I didn't get to go to the sewer plant today. Nothing like stomping through the sludge.
Kept them clean, sir.
But I'll catch up on that. I will, I promise. It's not like I don't
Tony
live
brought
right
some
up
to
the
put in
hill
your
from it
truck.
and smell it all the time anyway.
I
What?
think Tony brought some and he
Did
set it in your
Yep,
truck.
a lot of sample, yeah.
Yeah, it's in your truck.
I was gonna say, you were complimenting, oh, never mind. But we had good, robust conversation. That's the term, robust conversation, the topics and issues tonight, and I appreciate it. Thank you to the VFW for being here and allowing us to hear their thoughts. And thank you to the board for allowing me to serve as mayor tonight. Anybody else have anything to say? And thank you to staff for staying here. This is dedication, man, 10:30. Thank you. All right. Motion to adjourn, anybody?
So moved.
Nobody wants to do it? Oh, Mark's going to make the motion to
Second.
adjourn. Been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. We are adjourned. Thank you, folks.
Any nays?